Chapter 52. The lizard opened its mouth and spat out a stream of green acid. "Be careful!" Lan Zhao shouted. But it was too late. The lizard's timing was perfect. Huang Zhao's expression was fierce, but he couldn't dodge. He could only close his eyes and clench his teeth. Pucci. Huang Zhao's vision was covered in darkness, but he was pushed to the ground. In the next moment, he opened his eyes and saw his brother Lan Zhao's face twisted in pain. "Brother!" Huang Zhao shouted and hurriedly rolled on the ground. With space, he threw the javelin in his hand with all his strength. "Die!" Huang Zhao shouted. After the green-skinned lizard spat out the green liquid, it immediately became sluggish. Before it could close its mouth, the javelin pierced through its skull and got stuck between its bones. At the critical moment of life and death, Huang Zhao took advantage of the lizard's weakness and killed it. "Brother!" Huang Zhao saw the lizard fall to the ground. He took a deep breath and threw himself to Lan Zhao's side. Lan Zhao was lying on the ground, in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Even a tough guy like him was howling in grief. His voice was very mournful. Seeing the wound on Lan Zhao's back, Huang Zhao couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The wound was very terrifying. The green acid corroded the flesh, making sizzling sounds. The flesh turned into pus and a pungent stench wafted through the air. The injury worsened very quickly. Huang Zhao was sure that in a few breaths' time, he would see Lan Zhao's bones. This was only a bronze-ranked lizard. Huang Zhao didn't dare touch it with his hands. He hurriedly took out the water bag at his waist and poured it all down. The acid was diluted by a large amount of water, and Lan Zhao's injury quickly healed. Huang Zhao grabbed Lan Zhao's arm and lifted his body up. His other hand poured the water bag, quickly washing the acid on Lan Zhao's body onto the sand. Save water. Lan Zhao's pain was greatly alleviated. He used what little rationality he had left to remind Huang Zhao. "I can't keep him." Huang Zhao clenched his teeth. Lan Zhao's injury was serious. He had no choice but to use all the water in the bag. Meanwhile, a streak of green liquid almost brushed past Zhen Jin's ear as it streaked across the sky. Zhen Jin's expression was grave. He was besieged by more than a dozen lizards, many of which were black iron and bronze-ranked magical beasts. Relying on his nimble movements and rich experience, Zhen Jin kept dodging while killing the multi-headed lizards. However, he could clearly feel that it was getting more and more difficult for him to move forward. He couldn't help but look back at the path he came from and yelled in his heart, "Why aren't they here yet?" Whoosh! A soft sound rang out. An arrow flew over the heads of countless lizards with great difficulty and stuck in the sand. "I've already done my best." At the top of the sand dune, Baiya was panting heavily. He looked at the short bow in his hand and couldn't help but shake his head. Relying on his archery skills, he displayed the maximum range of his short bow, but the arrow he shot was still more than 10 steps away from Zhen Jin. This short bow, which had been ravaged by the wind and sand, was also on the verge of collapse after going through a series of battles. "Lord Zhen Jin, medicine! Use your nose to inhale!" The others shouted in unison. Zhen Jin hesitated for a moment. He had his own plan, and Baiya's arrow was beyond his expectations. What should he do? Zhen Jin gritted his teeth and jumped up. At this critical moment, he chose to believe in his companions. The lizard in front of him didn't expect this, and its head was stomped on by Zhen Jin. The latter soared into the air and flew a distance away. This action was very dangerous. If Zhen Jin was hit by the acid spray in the air, it would be very difficult for him to dodge. With a bang, Zhen Jin landed on the ground. Some of the 3 lizards opened their mouths, while others waved their claws, wanting to kill Zhen Jin. In the blink of an eye, Zhen Jin noticed the only escape route with just a quick glance. He rolled again and again, barely managing to roll between 2 lizards. He reached out and grabbed the arrow shaft. His right foot pushed off the ground and his whole body rose. He stood up again. He didn't stay in the same place. He opened his legs and ran with all his might. As he ran, he pulled out the arrowhead and saw a light yellow smoke coming out of the arrowhead. Jinjin took a deep breath with his nose and inhaled the smoke. Cough, cough, cough. He suddenly coughed and spat out clouds of gray smoke. At the same time, gray smoke came out of his ears and nose. He even shed light gray tears. After a few breaths, Zhen Jin found that he had lost his sense of smell and taste. He couldn't feel his tongue or nose. Even his vision and hearing had been weakened to a certain extent. This was very disadvantageous for him. If he wanted to break through the lizard's encirclement, he needed to be alert and alert. He relied on his sensitive 5 senses. Now, his 5 senses had been weakened by half. All of a sudden, the pressure that the lizards gave him increased by more than 2 times. At the top of the sand dune, use these arrowheads. ZD took out 5 or 6 arrowheads from the small leather bag at her waist. Baiyu immediately took them and placed them on the shaft of the arrow. These arrowheads were made by ZD in the lizard's hatching cave. Many people had seen them, so it wasn't strange. Whoosh! Baiyu prepared for a few breaths, then immediately pulled the bowstring and shot an arrow. The arrow streaked through the air, and green smoke kept coming out of the arrowhead. Then, it pierced into the sand, and a large amount of green smoke gushed out. The green smoke slowly sank and finally landed on the sand, forming a temporary smoke wall. The exploration team members shouted in unison to remind Zhen Jin. The needle gold immediately rushed into the green smoke and ran along the green smoke. The surrounding green lizards tried to rush into the green smoke, but they quickly retreated in a sorry state while howling. The green smoke was the same as the powder that ZD had sprinkled earlier. The green lizards' respiratory tracts would be strongly corroded when they breathed in the green smoke. However, after Zhen Jin inhaled the previous medicinal smoke, he was able to breathe freely in the green smoke without any reaction. There's actually such a wonderful medicine. The members of the exploration team widened their eyes in surprise. ZD shook her head. To be precise, this is a failed product. This medicine is poisonous, and only Lord Zhen Jin's body can control it. After using it, you can breathe freely in the corrosive green smoke for a certain period of time. If it were us, we would have suffocated to death long ago. Zhen Jin's cultivation was at least at the silver level, possibly at the gold level. Although his physical fitness was not as good as most magical beasts, it was far superior to normal humans. Just like that, Baiyu shot arrows again and again, and the medicinal powder created green smoke. With such help, Jin Zhen went all the way to the top of the dune without any hindrance and successfully joined the others. Sir! Lord Zhen Jin! The members of the exploration team surrounded Zhen Jin, all of them excited. Baiyu looked at Zhen Jin, his face full of admiration. Sir, what should we do next? Someone asked. Get ready. Everyone, follow me and charge out. I'll charge at the front, Zhen Jin replied. Song Su shook his head and smiled bitterly. Lord Zhen Jin, I'm afraid this plan won't work. ZD told him the details of the medicine. Zhen Jin smiled but did not respond first. Instead, he turned around and looked in the direction he came from. His eyes narrowed slightly. After looking into the distance for a moment, he suddenly smiled. This time, the scene he observed did not disappoint him. He finally got what he wanted. Thus, he said, of course, I can't do it alone. However, I've been here before. At that time, I hadn't discovered you. But the pink medicine showed that there were clues about you in the depths of the lizard's nest. It was difficult for me to rush into the lizard's underground nest alone, so I turned around and provoked them, attracting the scorpions. The injuries on my body were left by provoking the scorpions. Look, they're here. Everyone hurriedly looked over and saw a large number of scorpions rushing over from afar. These scorpions were huge in size, not to be outdone by the lizards. The Scorpion King that led the scorpions had a strong silver-level aura. My lord is wise. That's great, we're saved. Everyone was overjoyed. They finally saw the hope of escaping. However, the scene of the two groups of beasts killing each other did not happen. The scorpions stopped at the edge of the lizards' territory. After a commotion, almost all the dark iron-level lizards rushed to the front of the scorpions. The two groups of beasts did not fight directly. Instead, they confronted each other. Could it be that the scorpions saw through our plan? Damn it, let's fight. Everyone became impatient. Zhenjin smiled. Don't worry. I witnessed the battle between the lizards and scorpions early this morning. They will provoke and clamor first. If both sides do not back down, the strongest will stand up and fight alone. The situation now is the same. Give me some water and food. I need to replenish myself, Zhenjin requested. Immediately, water and dry food were passed to Zhenjin. Zhenjin had used up all the food he had. After he first investigated the lizard's nest, he ate the snake meat and ran back. He found the scorpions and lured them over. Zhenjin chewed in big mouthfuls. As his Adam's apple bobbed, the food and water entered his stomach. The medicinal mist he inhaled was still in effect, so the youth could not taste it at all. However, just the act of eating alone gave him a sense of satisfaction and happiness. Zhenjin was really hungry and thirsty now. After discovering the pink potion, he traveled a long distance to the edge of the lizard's nest. Then, he retreated and found the scorpions. He provoked the scorpions without hesitation and ran back and forth between the two places. After that, under the strong sunlight, he charged into the lizard group alone. Whether it was physical or mental strength, it was a huge test and consumed a lot of energy. Eat a little more. My lord. The exploration team members surrounded Zhenjin and watched him eat in big mouthfuls. Many of them subconsciously swallowed their saliva. Although they had eaten, it was obvious that they would not be full. Yes, Lord Zhenjin, you are powerful and need more food than us. My lord, put on this leather armor. We still have spare ones. Someone saw that Zhenjin was dressed in linen clothes and immediately contributed the equipment on his body. The exploration team members all knew that he was the key to saving them. They placed all their hopes on Zhenjin. How much food do we have left? After asking for the answer, Zhenjin shook his head and stopped eating. There was not much food left in the team. The future situation was unpredictable, so he had to save as much as possible. Phew! He stood up, straightened his back, and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Although he was only half full, he was satisfied at the moment. He took the leather armor and put it on. It was a little big, and it had the effect of resisting acid. Zhenjin was not looking forward to it. But it was better than nothing. It was better than nothing. As for the sword, he had the spider blade, so he chose a dagger. After he was simply armed, he glanced around and looked at the 5 or 6 exploration team members. This was the most surprising thing for him. There were actually so many people who were still alive. This was greatly beyond his expectations. Zhenjin was not a thief and did not have the ability to sneak. Therefore, he had only discovered clues to the powder potion and did not immediately go deep into the lizard's underground cave to investigate. At that time, Sang-Su, ZD, and the others were still in the underground cave. Neither side noticed each other. The second time, Zhenjin came here and suddenly found that so many people were still alive. He was so happy. After seeing these people, he did not hesitate and instantly made up his mind to do his best to protect and save these people. On one hand, this was the creed of the Knights Templar. On the other hand, the pressure of surviving alone was very great. Zhenjin had already deeply felt it. He needed Sang-Su's knowledge, ZD's potions, and so on. Even Bai Ye and the others were precious labor. Looking further ahead, when he escaped from this island in the future, he would still have to compete for the position of the Lord of White Sand City. He would need the help of his subordinates. Chapter 53. The The two groups of beasts were clamoring, their voices growing louder and louder. The scorpions gradually gained the upper hand, as they had a silver-ranked leader, so they were confident. On the other hand, the lizards did not have a silver-ranked leader, but under the pressure of the enemy, these lizards were united. Many of the black iron-ranked green-skinned lizards huddled together, facing the silver-ranked scorpions without any intention of retreating. This was their nest, and there was more than one cave for storing lizard eggs. Moreover, the number of lizards was far greater than the number of scorpions. The leader of the scorpions finally lost its patience, waving its two large pincers and attacking. It charged into the group of lizards in front of it. A few of the strongest black iron-ranked lizards moved at the same time, some spitting acid, some baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, facing the silver-headed scorpion. The silver-headed scorpion was extremely savage and ferocious, quickly defeating these black iron-ranked lizards. The lizards were in a mess, and their tight formation became loose. The scorpions' morale was greatly boosted, and they followed their leader, charging in. At this moment, both sides were engaged in an all-out battle. Seeing this, Zhen Jin's heart finally settled. Compared to beasts, humans had poor physical qualities, but humans had intelligence, and this was something that most beasts could not achieve. Because of this, the scorpions were easily used by Zhen Jin. Of course, there were also intelligent beasts, not to mention pure dragon breeds. Just ZD's team that rescued Zhen Jin was almost completely wiped out by the attack of a cunning blue wolf. In a head-on confrontation, the blue wolf was probably weaker than the leader of the scorpions, but it had the intelligence of a human, so it could fully display its abilities, cunning, insidious, and varied tactics. Zhen Jin was not in a hurry to lead the group to break out of the encirclement, but waited patiently for a while. After a while, the huge group of lizards became even more chaotic, and many of the lizards under the sand dune left, rushing to the front line. Although there was still a group of lizards surrounding the sand dune, not wanting to let go of the food on the sand dune, the number of lizards was much thinner than before. "Follow me closely." Zhen Jin took a deep breath, looking down at the lizards under the sand dune. Everyone could not hide their nervousness. The risk of breaking out of the encirclement was extremely high. If they were not careful, they would be eaten by the lizards or corroded to death by the acid. However, if they did not break out of the encirclement, they would definitely die if they stayed at the top of the sand dune. The breakout began. Zhen Jin took the lead, wielding the spider blade and wearing an ill-fitting leather armor. The lizards that surrounded the dune were originally lying on the sand with their heads lowered. When they heard the commotion, they immediately raised their heads and roared as they pounced on Zhen Jin and the others. When the first lizard was 10 steps away from Zhen Jin, it suddenly opened its mouth and sprayed out a stream of acid. When the acid hit, everyone immediately felt a strong corrosive smell. Originally, everyone had been following closely behind Zhen Jin, but in the face of the acid, no one was able to withstand it and could only scatter. The tight formation had just broken out of the encirclement when it was completely broken. Zhen Jin threw himself onto the sand and rolled to the bottom of the lizard's head. He let out a low roar and suddenly jumped up. The spider blade in his hand swung backwards, drawing a shadow in the lizard's eyes. Zhen Jin and the lizard brushed past each other. The next moment, the lizard's head fell onto the sand, green blood spurting out from its neck like a fountain. Zhen Jin did not stop. His footsteps did not stop as he charged into the group of lizards. The spider blade was indeed made from a silver-ranked magical beast. It was incomparably sharp, and no lizard could withstand it. These lizards were only ordinary beasts. The bronze and dark iron magical beasts in the group were attracted by the scorpions. Thus, Zhen Jin was invincible, and no one could stop him. The valiant Zhen Jin attracted almost all the attention. Everyone followed Zhen Jin to break out of the encirclement, and the pressure was much lower than expected. Lord Zhen Jin is really too valiant. So this is the Temple Knights. The Temple Knights are indeed worthy of being the #1 knight order of the human race. Everyone looked at Jinjin's back, their hearts full of praise and admiration. However, just as everyone was about to kill their way through the encirclement of the lizards, a group of lizard magical beasts was finally attracted. At a glance, there were more than a dozen bronze-level lizards and 3 or 4 dark iron-level lizards. The lizards obviously did not want to let go of these delicious food. The pressure on Zhenjin increased dramatically. His spider blade was still extremely sharp. Against the magical beast-level green lizards, one slash could cause heavy injuries. However, Zhenjin also found it difficult to resist the acid sprayed by the lizard. The situation of both sides was actually very similar. Both sides had strong offense and weak defense. In order to avoid the acid, Zhenjin could only choose to roll and jump, dodging with all his might. What was even more burdensome was that he could not move alone and had to take care of the people behind him. Someone screamed. Zhenjin turned around and saw that one of the exploration team members had been shot by the acid and had fallen to the ground, rolling around in pain. Almost at the same time, the surrounding lizards seized the opportunity. Some of the lizards bit the head of the exploration team member, some bit his arms, and some bit his legs. The exploration team member struggled violently and roared desperately, but the lizards still easily broke away from Zhenjin's team and retreated to the side. A few lizards surrounded the exploration team member, lowering their heads and opening their mouths, tearing, chewing, and swallowing to their heart's content. It was obvious that there was no way to save him. Zhenjin could only grit his teeth and use 120% of his strength to open up a path in front. Finally, the young knight's vision suddenly opened up, and the pressure around him suddenly lightened. He had killed his way through the encirclement. "Ah, Lord Scholar!" Bai Ye's exclamation suddenly came from behind him. Zhenjin hurriedly turned around, and with just a glance, his eyes were about to split open. Sang-Su fell to the sand, and the lizards behind him were only 5 or 6 steps away from him. This old scholar's physical fitness was poor to begin with. Although he had been taken care of during the process of breaking out, he still fell to the back of the team. "Let's go!" To Zhenjin's surprise, Bai Ye suddenly turned around, ran a few steps back, and handed his hand to Sang-Su. The hissing of the lizards behind him was almost close to his ears. Sang-Su knew his situation and shouted angrily at Bai Ye, "Go, don't worry about me." Bai Ye did not listen to his advice. He gritted his teeth and walked to Sang-Su's side. He grabbed Sang-Su's clothes and dragged him a few steps away. Almost at the same time, the lizard behind him pounced. Its wide mouth almost bit Sang-Su, but it gnawed on a mouthful of sand and stones. The lizard was furious. It turned around abruptly and swung its tail at him. Bai Ye did not have time to dodge at all. He could only hurriedly raise his free left arm. With a muffled bang, he was unsurprisingly sent flying into the air by the lizard's tail. The lizard opened its mouth and pounced on Sang-Su again. However, at this time, Zhenjin finally turned around and attacked. With a slash, not only did he end the lizard's life, but he also forced the other lizards behind it to retreat. "Let's go!" Zhenjin picked up Sang-Su and broke out of the encirclement again. Sang-Su was thin and weak, and Zhenjin's physical fitness was far superior to that of ordinary people. It was easy for him to carry him, and he was still running as if he was flying. Without Zhenjin at the front, the team immediately lost their momentum. It was as if they had fallen into a swamp and were surrounded by more and more lizards. During this process, one of the members was too weak to dodge in time. He was sprayed in the head by the acid and died tragically on the spot. Zhenjin gathered with Sang-Su and charged forward with his arms raised. They easily broke through the encirclement of the lizards in front of them, and the whole team started moving again. After killing for a while, there were not many lizards left in front of Zhenjin, and they dispersed. "We're out!" Everyone was ecstatic. Zhenjin turned around and looked back. Almost everyone surrounded him except for Bai Ye, who was surrounded by lizards. It turned out that after Baya was swept away by the lizard's tail, his arm and ribs were fractured. He was in severe pain and his speed was greatly reduced. The lizards did not dare to attack Jinjin, so they targeted the weakest one. Jinjin was about to turn around and save him again, but Sang-Soo shouted in a low voice, "Sir, don't care about him. If we don't leave, these lizards will surround us again." Everyone looked at Sang-Soo. Just now, Sang-Soo was in a desperate situation. If it weren't for Baya buying time, Jinjin wouldn't have been able to save him in time. It could be said that Baya was also Sang-Soo's savior. But now, Sang-Soo stopped Jinjin and abandoned Baya. Such heartlessness and indifference caused everyone to look at Sang-Soo in a different light. Although they despised him, no one refuted him. At this point, 2 of the exploration team members had already sacrificed themselves. Everyone was in a terrible state. Think about it. After experiencing the sandstorm and falling into the lizard's underground cave, they had finally managed to kill their way out, but they were surrounded at the top of the dune. Now that they had broken out, everyone was extremely hungry, thirsty, and exhausted. They were very weak. Most of them had already reached the limit of their physical strength. They were relying on their fear of death and their desire for life to support themselves. Sang-Soo was right. Once Jinjin returned, they would be surrounded by the lizards again. How long could they hold on? Could they hold on until Jinjin returned with Baya? No one had the confidence. In an instant, Jinjin was also a little hesitant. Unlike Sang-Soo, Baya was just an ordinary person. He was just a hunter and his shooting skills were more accurate. His value was much lower than Sang-Soo's, but he was not irreplaceable. If I go to save him and these people are attacked by the lizards, what should I do? The others are fine, but the key is ZD and Sang-Soo. In an instant, the young knight scanned his surroundings. The others were also looking at him. Looking at these people's complicated gazes, Jinjin's hesitation suddenly disappeared and he made a decision. "I said, I will not abandon anyone," Jinjin said firmly. "Baya will not be an exception." Everyone was shocked. Jinjin was about to move, but ZD grabbed Jinjin's arm and pointed to the northwest. "Sir, look over there, please be careful." Jinjin saw the leader of the scorpions, the silver-ranked golden spear battle scorpion, had already rushed to the vicinity. The lizards did not have a silver-ranked leader. No matter how many black iron or bronze-ranked lizards there were, they could not stop it. The silver-ranked battle scorpion rampaged, its pincers like door planks guarding against the countless streams of acid that shot at it. At the same time, its scorpion tail kept stabbing, each time taking the life of a lizard. "It's coming for me." Jinjin felt as if a bolt of lightning flashed across his head. In order to provoke the scorpions, he had fiercely slashed at the battle scorpion, but there was no result. On the contrary, his arm was pierced by the scorpion tail, and he had no choice but to flee in a sorry state. The silver-ranked battle scorpion was very vengeful. It had forcefully led the scorpions to chase Jinjin for a long distance. Now that it had killed all the lizards, it wanted to find trouble with Jinjin. "You must be careful. I will be back soon." Jinjin nodded to ZD, his heart slightly warm. The spider blade in Jinjin's hands was extremely sharp. With one slash, a lizard fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Jinjin quickly came to Baya's side. "Sir!" Baya, who was in a desperate situation, saw Jinjin come to save him and was extremely excited. His eyes were filled with gratitude, admiration, and love. With Baya, Jinjin killed his way back and successfully reunited with the others. The thing that Jinjin was worried about did not happen. ZD, Sang-Soo, and the others did not suffer any losses. "Follow me and leave this place." Jinjin's tone was calm as he charged in front again. "Yes, sir." Everyone responded in unison. Jinjin returned with Baya, and the morale of the entire team immediately soared. At this moment, in everyone's eyes, The young man seemed to be shrouded in a layer of light. Zhenjin had once said that he would not give up on anyone. Zhenjin saved Sang-Su and rescued Baiya under the threat of the leader of the Scorpions. He had fulfilled his promise. He had also let everyone understand his will. Nothing was more convincing than actual actions. At this moment, everyone was completely convinced by Zhenjin. Finally, they really killed their way out of the encirclement. Zhenjin looked back. The lizards were in chaos and there were no pursuers. Previously, when he saved Baiya, he was still worried about the leader of the Scorpion pack. He did not expect that the final scene would be a fierce battle between the lizards and the silver battle scorpions. Both sides had no time to care about Zhenjin and the others. In the end, Zhenjin easily led everyone to escape. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Zhenjin still had a sense of worry. He did not know why, but he felt that it would not be so easy to escape from the Golden Spear Scorpion pack. Chapter 54. The sun fiercely baked the tawny desert. Under the torment of the sun, the sand dune could only lie limp. The air was distorted by the scorching heat. A man stepped on the hot sand step by step, slowly moving forward. This man was thin, his eyes were swollen, and his gaze was lifeless. When he walked, he panted heavily, like a mechanical puppet. He was not alone, there was an unconscious man on his back. The man on his back had his eyes tightly shut. Even though he was unconscious, his eyebrows were still tightly knitted, twisting into a knot. This was because his back was injured and the pain was tormenting him. In comparison, the unconscious man's physique was more robust, while the walking man was thinner. Although there were differences in physique, the two men's faces were very similar, showing that they were closely related. It was the brothers Huang Zhao and Lan Zhao. Ever since they saw ZD, Sang-Su, and the others surrounded by lizards on the sand dune, under Huang Zhao's insistence, the two brothers secretly escaped from the green lizard's nest. However, along the way, they still encountered lizards that wandered outside. In order to save Huang Zhao's life, Lan Zhao bravely blocked the acid spray for his brother. And because of this, Lan Zhao was seriously injured and fell into a coma. The desert stretched as far as the eye could see, seemingly without end. Huang Zhao carried Lan Zhao on his back for a long time. He was thirsty and hungry, and his stomach had been growling for a long time. What tormented him even more was the feeling of thirst. Right now, his throat was almost smoking, and his tightly shut lips were dry and cracked. Every time he breathed through his nose, the scorching hot air was like lava pouring into his throat. Water, water, Lan Zhao's weak call came into his ears. Cyanobacteria was still unconscious, and this call came entirely from his survival instinct. The call broke Huang Zhao's dazed state. He blinked and stopped in his tracks. Then, he used one hand to support his brother, and the other hand to touch Lan Zhao's forehead. Lan Zhao's forehead was even hotter than the sand under his feet. Huang Zhao's heart also sank. Lan Zhao was unconscious and had a high fever. This was definitely not a good sign. Under normal circumstances, if the patient's condition was too serious, they would have to seek treatment from the divine arts. The priests from the Temple of Life in the Sacred Empire were very good at healing. But now, the two brothers were on this dangerous and unpredictable island in the middle of the desert, where there were no traces of people. How could they find the priest of the Temple of Life? Perhaps I should have worked with my brother to save Miss ZD. She has potions. Even if she doesn't, she can still concoct potions. Thinking of this, a trace of regret appeared in her heart. But shortly after, he shook his head inwardly. No, Miss ZD, Sang-Su and the rest are dead meat. They must be dead by now. They were eaten by the lizards and then pooped out. No matter how good-looking a person is, how noble a person is, how knowledgeable a person is, how young a person is, they will only be a pile of shit. I don't want to become a pile of shit. Brother, you have to hold on, Huang Zhao said in her heart. He took a step forward and set off again. Water, water. Lan Zhao still called out from time to time, but his voice was getting weaker and weaker. Huang Zhao wanted to smile bitterly, but he didn't have the strength to move the muscles on his face. I want water too, even if I have to exchange everything I have, Huang Zhao shouted in his heart. But didn't we use all our water to clean your wounds? My brother. I swear, if I find water now, even if it's a lake, I will drink it dry. Huang Zhao, who was secretly furious, was stunned on the spot in the next moment. Turning around the sand dune in front of him, his field of vision suddenly widened. There really was an oasis in front of him. Huang Zhao was stunned. Immediately, he reacted. His eyes widened, his mouth opened, revealing a look of ecstasy. He shouted, "Oasis, it's an oasis! Brother, we have water, we have water! Just like last time, when we were teleported here, we found an oasis. Now we have encountered an oasis again. Ha ha! We are saved! Brother, we are saved!" Huang Zhao carried Lan Zhao on his back and ran towards the oasis at an unprecedented speed. Ecstasy seemed to have endowed him with endless physical strength. The originally heavy Lan Zhao was now as light as straw. However, no matter how much he ran, the distance between him and the oasis didn't shorten at all. Suddenly, Huang Zhao's legs went soft, and his whole body fell to the sand. Lan Zhao, who was on his back, also fell to the ground. He even rolled a few times, still unconscious. Huang Zhao raised his head. Sand covered his face, and the oasis in his field of vision suddenly disappeared. Huang Zhao was stunned. Because of the fierce run just now, his chest was constantly rising and falling, and he was panting heavily. No, no. Huang Zhao knelt on the ground, holding his head with both hands and pulling his hair. The despair after hope made him feel even more miserable. This isn't real, this isn't real. He stretched out his hand, 5 fingers spread, and reached in the direction where the oasis illusion used to be, but he couldn't catch it. It's fake, it's fake. Huang Zhao had no strength left. The mad run just now had squeezed out the last of his strength, but because of his emotions, he neglected his own true state. In the end, he fell to the ground because his body couldn't bear it and broke away. There was no oasis. It was just a mirage. Everything was empty. The sun was still hot, and the desert was vast and boundless. Huang Zhao was like a small insect in the middle. Tiny, pitiful, laughable. The elder brother that he had once relied on was now unconscious, lying motionless on the sand not far away. At this moment, an unprecedented sense of helplessness enveloped Huang Zhao's body and mind. He finally felt the pressure of surviving alone. He could no longer use his previous state of confusion to resist. Breathe. Breathe. Don't be afraid. Huang Zhao told himself. Breathe. I feel like I can't breathe. In the next moment, Huang Zhao grabbed the clothes on his chest. Fear, helplessness, desolation, sadness, and other emotions were so strong that they blocked his chest, his throat, and his nose, almost suffocating him. I don't want to die. Finally, Huang Zhao burst into tears. Huff, huff, huff. Zhen Jin's chest rose and fell violently as he panted heavily. He was also in a bad state. The injury on his arm didn't get better under ZD's treatment. The wound turned into pus, and he had a low fever. Although water and food were given to him first, he couldn't be said to be full. So he was still hungry and thirsty. Whether it was hunger, thirst, or injuries, they all made his limbs feel weak. But now, Zhen Jin threw all these to the back of his mind. He focused all his attention on the great enemy in front of him. The one confronting him was the silver-level magic beast, the leader of the Golden Spear Scorpions. After successfully breaking through and shaking off the green-skinned lizards, Zhen Jin's worries quickly turned into reality. Under the leadership of the leader, the scorpions chased after Zhen Jin and the others after killing the lizard. The exploration team's speed couldn't compare to these horse-sized giant scorpions, and they were quickly caught up. Jinjin had no choice but to step forward and confront the leader of the scorpions. This wasn't the fourth time they fought. Both sides were still evenly matched. The silver-level battle scorpion hissed and slowly retreated. After a certain distance, it turned and left. There were a few new wounds on its body. These were all caused by Jinjin. But the scorpion's shell was really too hard. Even if Jinjin used all his strength to slash, he couldn't completely cut through this layer of shell. If I can activate my fighting energy, whether it's to increase my own strength or to add sharpness to my weapon, I can kill this scorpion. Jinjin sighed secretly. Seeing the leader of the Golden Spear Scorpion retreat, the others didn't cheer. At first, when they saw Jinjin forcing the leader of the Scorpion group to retreat, they cheered. But then they realized that the silver-level magic beast didn't really leave. Instead, it followed Jinjin under the protection of the Scorpion group. After a period of time, the leader of the Scorpion group seemed to catch its breath and rushed up again, starting a one-on-one battle with Jinjin. After several fierce battles, Jinjin was very tired. He used up too much physical strength and energy. After meeting up with ZD, Sang-Soo and the others, he didn't really rest. But he didn't dare to show the slightest bit of weakness, fearing that the Scorpion group would swarm him after seeing his weakness. Jinjin could barely fight against the leader of the Scorpion group, but once the battle started, he couldn't even protect himself, let alone the others. "Sir, please let me check your injuries." Seeing that the battle was over, ZD immediately came to Jinjin's side and carefully checked the wounds on Jinjin's body. There were many new wounds on Jinjin's body. Some of them were caused by the corrosion of acid, but most of them were caused by the leader of the Scorpion group. She took out a medicine and sprinkled it on Jinjin's wounds. However, she was helpless against the injuries on Jinjin's arms. The young girl frowned and kept shaking her head. "Sir, the injuries on your arms are worsening. My medicine has no effect on it. Sigh, if I had enough materials, perhaps I could make a medicine to alleviate the injuries." Jinjin patted the back of the young girl's hand and said with a gentle smile, "Miss ZD, you've already done well enough. My strength has given me a body that far surpasses that of ordinary people. Once I'm injured, I need even more effective medicine to have an effect. But low-level magic medicines are completely useless here. The effects of the herbs you've made are already amazing. You've already done your best." The young girl was silent for a while, then analyzed with a serious expression, "Actually, the Scorpion's golden spear doesn't have any poison. Although the injury on your arms is very big, it's enough to heal by relying on your own recovery ability. But now, we can't get rid of the Scorpion group. Sir, you can only continuously fight with the leader of the Scorpion group and continuously squeeze out the energy and physical strength in your body. Every fierce battle will pull on your wounds. There's no rest at all and no time to recover." "That's right, sir. If this continues, I'm afraid we'll die in the hands of these scorpions." Someone interrupted. The others were also deeply worried. Everyone could see that Jinjin's condition was getting worse. In the current situation, everyone was relying on Jinjin to survive. If Jinjin fell, even if they resisted with all their strength, they would only become the Scorpion group's meal. Chapter 55. Jinjin glanced around and immediately understood that everyone's hearts were wavering. The young knight knew exactly what they were thinking. As the leader, he could ignore his own injuries first, but he had to consider the entire team first. Jinjin knew that in such a desperate situation, watching themselves slide towards death step by step, but there was nothing they could do. Most people would break down, go crazy, or even go crazy. Therefore, he chuckled and comforted them. "Everyone, you should be glad that this Golden Spear Scorpion group treated us as a group of beasts. The Scorpion leader and I started a battle between kings. Unless the outcome is decided, the Scorpion group will not attack us in full force. Indeed, it's all thanks to you that we're still alive, Lord Jinjin. But that's true, sooner or later, we'll also, while the exploration team members echoed, they also hesitated. Zhenjin continued, as long as we're still alive, there's a lot of hope. For example, if we encounter other people, get support, and be saved. Or if there's another sandstorm to disrupt everything, or if the teleportation is activated again, we'll leave this place directly. Everyone looked at each other. Was the Lord Zhenjin too optimistic? Then everyone spoke. Lord Zhenjin, we've been teleported twice and calculated the time. It's about half a month. We just teleported here a few days ago. It's basically impossible for us to be teleported again now. If there's such a terrifying sandstorm again, we'll all be doomed. Now that we're trapped in the desert, we don't know how big the desert is or where we are exactly. Who can save us? The possibility is too small. Everyone spoke in twos and threes, looking very depressed. Zhenjin maintained his smile. But it's still possible, isn't it? When you were trapped in the dune, did you ever think that I would save you? After I met up with you, did I ever think that the Scorpion group would come to help us? Everyone looked at each other again, and fell into silence for a moment. They had to admit that Zhenjin's words made sense. So, don't ever give up hope. Zhenjin sighed and said solemnly, as long as we keep hope and never give up, we will still have the hope and possibility of survival before death really comes. My lord, you're right. With my lord here, we have hope. Everyone's eyes lit up slightly, and their morale was boosted by Zhenjin. But Zhen immediately changes the thread of discussion. However, it is not the behavior of a brave man to only hope for help and change from the outside. What's more reliable is that we save ourselves. Zhenjin glanced around. His gaze paused slightly on ZD before finally stopping on Sang-Soo. Old scholar, what do you think? ZD had almost used up all her potions. The strongest powder she had could release a thick green acidic mist. However, they had tried many times before, and the acid mist was useless against the scorpions. The desert was very barren, and ZD lacked the materials to create new potions. Therefore, Zhenjin was looking forward to Sang-Soo's performance. Sang-Soo sensed Zhenjin's expectant gaze and shook his head with a bitter smile. I'm sorry, Lord Zhenjin, but I don't have any way to change the situation. In fact, I've always been very confused. Why is this scorpion group chasing after my lord? The biggest threat to them living here was probably those green-skinned lizards. However, they let go of the defeated lizards and are still chasing after my lord. According to what my lord told me, gold stones are the scorpion's food. They don't eat meat. However, the scorpion group has always listed us as their primary target. This is very illogical. Someone muttered, what's the point of paying attention to common sense in this damned place? Maybe when Lord Zhenjin provoked the scorpion group, he caused them great damage, causing them to hate my lord. Therefore, they have been chasing after him and have never given up. Zhenjin shook his head. I did kill a few scorpions, but it's definitely not comparable to the number of casualties the green lizards caused to the scorpion group. As for the silver battle scorpion, I've fought with it before. The wound on my arm was caused by it, and my blade only left a white mark on its head. It seems that we have to kill a spear scorpion and dissect its corpse to see its body structure. Only then can we understand the secrets hidden within. Sang-Soo gave his own suggestion. He had a point of view. The structure of a creature to a large extent determined the habits of a creature. Zhenjin agreed with this point of view. In fact, in the process of exploration and survival in the past, he had benefited a lot in this aspect. However, the scorpion group was right in front of them, so killing them and dissecting them was a very risky thing to do. Now, it was a battle of kings. The scorpion group did not attack, but watched the battle between the leader and Zhenjin every time. If the exploration team rashly attacked one of the scorpions and dissected it, how would the scorpions react? It was very likely that they would launch a group attack, and the exploration team with only a few people left would be easily destroyed by the scorpion group. It was too risky to attack ordinary spear scorpions rashly. Zhen Jin's team needed a good opportunity. The sun was slowly setting. It was no longer impossible to look directly at it. It hung in the western sky, like a round piece of iron that had been burned red after being out of the oven. The sunlight became dim, and the barren desert turned into a withered yellow color. Zhen Jin and the others moved forward in the desert. Everyone's faces were haggard. Their lips were dry and cracked, their eyes were swollen, their stomachs were rumbling with hunger, and their legs were sore. Food and water had begun to be supplied with the minimum amount. The scorpion group was far behind them. Along the way, they frantically searched for something to eat. However, the insects and lizards had long been frightened away by the scorpion group. Even if they encountered a few plants, under Tsang Su's reminder, the exploration team members had no choice but to give up. These few scattered plants grew alone in the desert. Their branches and leaves were thin and dry, and their roots were developed. They went deep into the ground. These plants could not be eaten, and some of them were poisonous. Once they were stabbed and bled, they would be poisoned. Tsang Su identified these plants and made everyone not dig rashly, saving everyone's strength. When night fell, Zhen Jin and the others saw huge stones. These were gold hemp stones. The exploration team members were not surprised. The road was led by Zhen Jin. This place was the natural camp that Zhen Jin had once rested at night. It was also their first destination for escape this time. With the gold hemp stones for heating, Zhen Jin and the others would be able to survive the bone-chilling desert night. They could even place their dry food on the gold hemp stones and heat it up before eating it. If they were in other places, without the gold hemp stones, they would have to light a fire for heating. Starting a fire required materials, and there was too little wood in the desert. If they wanted to start a fire, they would probably have to burn their own clothes as fuel. Here, they did not have the trouble of having to start a fire, and they saved a lot of survival resources. Food and water were the most important survival resources. The clothes on their bodies could keep out the cold and prevent sunburn. It was also an important survival resource. The night wind blew gently on their faces. The moonlight shone on the desert. Standing on the largest gold hemp stone, Zhen Jin withdrew his gaze from the distance. Although the scorpion group had also entered the gold hemp stone group, just like Zhen Jin and the others, they had shrunk their group and were resting in a corner. They had no intention of attacking. Zhen Jin heaved a sigh of relief. This situation was more advantageous to him. Ordinary people's vision was greatly limited at night. Zhen Jin, who did not have the help of battle chi, was no exception. Compared to humans, wild beasts, especially the predators among them, had excellent night vision. As for how far these spear scorpions could see in the night, Zhen Jin did not know. Just in case, the night watch would not be missing. Jumping off the gold hemp stone, Zhen Jin found that Tsang Su was kneeling on the ground, squinting his eyes and staring at the map in his hand. Although there was no fire, the moon was high in the sky, and the light was not bad. From time to time, Tsang Su would use his finger to draw some lines on the sand. Noticing that Zhen Jin had come to his side, Tsang Su raised his head and continued to draw lines on the sand. "Sir, I am guessing our position, the size of the desert, and the direction of the oasis," Tsang Su explained without raising his head. Zhen Jin nodded. "Is there any progress?" "Sigh, my lord, you have to understand that this work is difficult." The old scholar sighed deeply. "We lack enough information. We don't know how big the island is, how big the desert is, and where we are on the island. When we were teleported to the desert, we were lucky enough to find the oasis. But the desert lacks landmarks, and we have no way to determine how far the oasis is from the path we have taken. If the sun and moon are not man-made, and what we have observed is real, and there is no change in our route, then we can at least be sure of our direction. If the owner of the island did not interfere too much, then this island should still be a natural terrain. Most of the islands have high terrain in the center and low terrain in the periphery. So, if we find a river and follow it, we can theoretically reach the seaside. But now we are in the desert. In the end, the old scholar sighed again. I am sorry, my lord, I can't help you more. The current situation is quite bad, and I think we need luck, enough good luck. Yes. Zhenjin sighed. The young man's face was full of worry as he described the current situation. We have very little food and can only last for 2 days at most, and that is the minimum supply. What is more troublesome is the scorpion swarm, and it is difficult for us to get rid of them. I have to remind you of something, my lord. Song Su added. The danger that the scorpion swarm brings us is not just death itself. They have been following us all along, and it is a cunning and insidious hunting technique. Just like the red-haired arrow pigs in the Red Sand Desert, they will shoot arrows when they encounter large prey, and chase after the prey, causing the prey to continuously lose blood and become weak in the intense exercise, and eventually lose resistance. Maybe the scorpion swarm uses this tactic. Even if the scorpion swarm does not attack in full force, without enough food, we will become weaker. It is not only our bodies that are weak, but also our hearts. Being chased by the scorpion swarm for a long time, the pressure on us will become greater and greater, and we will become more and more fragile. Ordinary people need to maintain hope and peace in order to survive in an extreme environment. I know a lot of records, and the seemingly harmless mirage in the desert is actually very dangerous. Once the survivors in the desert don't discover the truth of the mirage and experience the huge difference between hope and disappointment, it's very easy for them to break down and give up on the principles they usually abide by, even giving up on their own lives. Chapter 56. Zhenjin nodded. I understand what you want to say. Thank you for your reminder. He slowly walked away from Song Su. Although this time, the old scholar did not provide an effective strategy, and he was helpless against the scorpion's pursuit. But he still gave Zhenjin a lot of help. The young knight knew that Song Su was trying to remind him that he had to make a decision. Because as time passed, the whole team's condition would become weaker and weaker, not only physically but also mentally. If this situation was allowed to develop, it was very likely that Zhenjin's team would collapse before the scorpions could fully attack. Zhenjin communicated with ZD again. Sir. ZD's voice sounded very weak, her back leaning against the golden stone. Her petite body was still covered by the magic robe. Now the magic robe had become dirty, and there were many holes in the hem and the back. Her amethyst-like eyes were far less bright than before, becoming dim and lacking vitality. At her own request, she ate less than the other members. In order to maintain her questioning as much as possible, she put on the hood. Under the night wind, the hair on her forehead fluttered gently. Zhenjin sighed softly and could not help but feel a sense of pity. He reached out his hand and carefully brushed ZD's hair to the side to avoid covering her eyes. ZD's eyes flickered. Sir, do you think we can still escape from this island? Zhenjin was immediately shocked. At this moment, ZD was so weak. The young knight suddenly realized that ZD in front of him, if all her abilities and identity were put aside, she was just a weak girl after all. She needed encouragement, comfort, and support. Of course we can. As long as we do our best. Zhenjin encouraged, although he also knew that these words were very weak. ZD nodded and asked again, Sir, when do you think we should kill a spear scorpion? Zhenjin was silent for a moment. Let's wait and see. After talking with ZD for a while, just like Song Su, ZD expressed that she couldn't help Zhenjin much. After asking the other members, Zhenjin was finally alone. Whether it was ZD or Song Su, they were both intelligent people. Both of them were very clear about the current situation. If they were to drag this out unnecessarily, they would undoubtedly die. Although they did not say it out loud, they were actually trying to persuade Zhen Jin to take the risk. Kill a spear scorpion, dissect it, and use its body parts as materials to concoct potions. But Zhen Jin had his own ideas. He had seen the battle between the lizard and the golden scorpion in the midst of the golden hemp stones. He was thinking, if there's another environment like this where the lizards and scorpions meet each other and fight each other, it will definitely cause chaos. Then, this will be an opportunity. The reason why Zhen Jin brought everyone back here was to create this opportunity. But Zhen Jin did not reveal his plan to the others. Why not say it out loud? Because Zhen Jin did not have absolute confidence. If he were to say it out loud, it would undoubtedly give everyone hope. But if the plan failed, everyone would be even more disappointed. According to the current morale of the team, Zhen Jin felt that disappointment after hope would greatly test everyone's psychological endurance. Song Su had previously advised him to understand people's hearts to prevent a mental breakdown. In fact, Zhen Jin did not need Song Su's advice. He had already secretly grasped this point. Late at night, on the golden hemp stones, the young knight retracted his gaze from the dark night and turned to the spider blade in his hand. Under the moonlight, there was an obvious crack on the surface of the spider blade. This extremely sharp weapon could no longer be used frequently. Zhen Jin did not find it strange. This was normal. Strictly speaking, the spider blade was just a material, not a real sword. It originally grew on the body of the silver-level blade spider. Although it was hard and sharp, it was still a part of the blade spider's body and received nutrients from the main body of the spider at all times. Only this way could the blade spider's legs maintain long-term health and sharpness. After the blade spider was killed by Zhen Jin, its legs were chopped off and it became a dead object, no longer receiving any nutrients. Then, these blades were continuously used and consumed. Under normal circumstances, the spider blade was an excellent material for weapons. Alchemists, blacksmiths, and others used a series of magic, alchemy, and smelting methods to process the spider blade so that it could be preserved for a long time. To truly create a long alchemy tool or magical weapon, the craftsmanship and techniques needed were more advanced and complicated. All kinds of materials were combined to form a whole, achieving the coordination of magic. Even so, the alchemy tool or magical weapon that was created needed maintenance. Even if it was a divine weapon, it still needed faith or divine power. The spider blade in Zhen Jin's hands did not receive any maintenance from beginning to end, and it was only attached to the hilt. It could be said to be extremely crude. Damage was its inevitable fate. In the past 2 days, Zhen Jin had used the spider blade to fight with the spear scorpions, accelerating the wear and tear of the spider blade. The scorpion's shell was extraordinarily hard. Zhen Jin used all his strength and could only leave shallow slash marks on the silver spear scorpion's shell. The other spear scorpions also had to use a lot of effort to cut through the scorpion's shell. At this moment, Zhen Jin, who was alone, looked at the cracked spider blade in his hands and could not help but think, how long can this weapon last? Can he rely on it to kill the silver spear scorpion? Then, he thought of himself, then how about me, how long can I last? Since the second teleportation, the young knight was like a sword in his hands. He never got any rest, did not have enough food and water, and went through long-distance raids, bravely breaking out of encirclement and so on. He was fiercely squeezing his physical strength and energy, and was faintly reaching his limit. This spider blade is no longer reliable. Then what else can I rely on? This time, Zhen Jin began to forget about God. He knew that divine spells were an extravagant hope. His only trump card was the mutation. Relying on the mutation of his body, he killed the silver-level blade spider and the dangerous flying squirrel. But the ability to mutate was very unreliable. After the teleportation, it was not triggered. Zhen Jin did not know the reason. He had guessed and felt that there were 2 relatively big possibilities. The first possibility was that he was not on the verge of death, his emotions were not intense, and did not meet the conditions to trigger the mutation. The second possibility was that the magic crystal in his heart lacked magic, and was not enough for him to mutate a third time. Thinking about it carefully, the first mutation had sharp claws, the second mutation had arms as thick as a bear, and the second mutation was less severe than the first. And during the second mutation, Zhenjin had already noticed that the magic crystal in his heart was greatly weakened. As for combat energy, on top of the huge golden stone, Zhenjin frowned slightly. Even if I can remember the key content and know how to use combat energy, the suppression of this island also makes it impossible for me to use combat energy. In fact, with the help of combat energy, it would be very easy to kill the Silver Spear Scorpion. Of course, this was on the premise that the combat energy of silver level and above was used. The night was vast, and the cold night wind blew Zhenjin's blonde hair slightly swaying. The young knight no longer looked at the sword in his hand, and cast his gaze on the moon hanging high above his head. Under the moonlight, like a thin veil, it covered Zhenjin's handsome face and seeped into his blonde hair, making the young man's slightly furrowed brows gradually relax. The corner of Zhenjin's mouth slowly raised, and he actually let out a silent laugh. At this moment, he was in the vast sea of sand, and the surroundings were quiet, as if he was the only one left facing the vast world, the universe, and nature. The young man's heart was filled with endless emotions. Compared to nature, what am I? My struggle, my resistance, my ambition, my responsibility, to me is very important, more important than my life. But in this world, they are very small, like grains of sand. My fight with the scorpions and lizards is only a small part of the countless races in nature, in the endless competition for reproduction and survival. Zhenjin felt deeply, but he was not discouraged or depressed at all. He found that his heart was very calm, without a trace of anxiety, or sorrow. On the contrary, he was very calm and collected. This was completely different from before. Not long ago, he led the entire exploration team and faced the crisis of food shortage. He decided to deal with the rats and make short bows. He bravely took on the responsibility of a leader, but during the whole process, although he was calm on the surface, his heart was filled with panic, helplessness, anxiety, and other emotions. The current situation was much worse than before, but the young knight's heart was very calm. Suffering was a gift of fortune from fate. Zhenjin received this fortune, and he obtained a considerable amount of growth. This was not a growth in cultivation or battle strength, but a rise in the state of mind. It was like a butterfly breaking free from a thick cocoon. Chapter 57. The night passed. The morning sun brushed past the horizon, leaving a faint shadow on the ground. The exploration team members had already woken up. They were awakened by the sound of the scorpions eating. Zhenjin did not show the slightest hint of joy or anger. His face was calm. However, he could not help but feel disappointed. It was different from what he had expected. The sun rose, but the reality was still cold. The lizards did not come. It seemed that the lizards had lost their silver-level leader, or it was possible that the last massacre by the scorpions had frightened the lizards and made them lose the will to fight, so they did not dare to come here again. The entire scorpions were eating. Although Tsang-Su had heard Zhenjin's description before, this was the first time he had seen it with his own eyes. The old scholar could not help but exclaim, "Nature is really too great. It created such a magical animal. These spear scorpions eat these stones, but they are actually feeding on metal. Their digestive system is very strong and special. They can actually consume all kinds of metals and add these metals to their shells. It is precisely because of this that the scorpion shells are so tough." Wait a minute. One of the exploration team members was doubtful. Isn't there a powerful mage on this island? Weren't these strange monsters created by this sorcerer? Sang-Soo smiled and shook his head. In fact, this is impossible. No matter how powerful the owner of this island is, he only used the life in nature and then pieced it together. It's just like how mages make puppet golems. They use metal to make the body of the golem and then take the soul to instill it into the golem to form intelligence. It's just like cutting pieces of a picture and piecing these pieces together. After a pause, Sang-Soo continued, if the owner of this island can really create things, then he or she is the creator, completely above all the emperors and dukes in the world. As far as I know, there are many gods in the world. The Shengming Emperor, several dukes in the human race, the great chief of the orcs, the great shaman, and so on. None of them can reach the level of directly creating life. ZD obviously agreed with Sang-Soo's words. She also said, although the creatures on this island are dangerous and strange, they are not perfect. The magic in their bodies was not coordinated. If the island master was an artisan, he could completely stabilize the mana within their bodies. Strictly speaking, the gold tier demons on this island could only be considered as quasi-gold tier. They could not be compared to the real gold tier demons. They don't have gold tier magic. No one had any objections. Magical beasts usually had similar spells. However, none of the ferocious beasts they had encountered on this island had such spells. The reason why the flying squirrel could discharge electricity was because it had a tissue structure similar to that of an electric eel. Lizards can spit acid because they have sacs that store acid. Venomous snakes can spit venom because they have venom glands in their heads. The essence of this type of spell was to use the magical power in the magical crystals of magical beasts to create something out of nothing, ignoring and bypassing the structure of the creature's body. It was like fighting aura or magic, allowing the body to reach a power that surpassed the limits of an individual or race. But the silence didn't last long. One of the exploration team members mumbled, even if the magic power of these monsters can't be coordinated, they're still very powerful. If we can't think of a way to get rid of the scorpions, we'll all die at the hands of these scorpions. Even if these scorpions don't eat meat, we'll still be pierced into minced meat by them. I curse the master of this island. No matter how powerful he is, he must be very vicious and dangerous when he created these things. The tails of these scorpions were all made into spear tips by him. The acid of the lizards can even corrode steel. No matter what kind of big shot he is, what kind of research he wants to do. If I die here, I'll turn into a vengeful spirit, a resentful spirit, and entangle him tightly, letting him taste the pain I suffered when I was alive. When Sang-Soo heard this, he suddenly let out a long sigh. He turned to ZD and said, Miss ZD, I'm gradually agreeing with your previous speculation. Everyone was puzzled. ZD understood what Sang-Soo meant and smiled. Are you saying that you also think that the island master is creating biological weapons? Yes. Sang-Soo was still squatting on the ground. He nodded slightly and glanced at the people around him. We guessed that there were a lot of man-made traces on this island and speculated that the island master was very likely a mage. I previously thought that she created these monsters for some kind of magical research. Perhaps he was seeking the profound meaning of life so that he could make some kind of breakthrough. But after experiencing so much and seeing all kinds of magical beasts, I'm more inclined to Miss ZD's guess. If he studies a certain field of magic and seeks the profound meaning of life, he should make artificial life more stable. But the artificial creatures here are all fierce and fierce. The scorpion is the size of a warhorse, and its tail has been modified into a spear tip. The lizard can spit acid and corrode swords. The flying squirrel can release strong electricity, and it seems to be deliberately targeting the metal armor. These creatures were created for the sake of improving their combat prowess. Lord Jinjin, I remember you said that you've encountered blade spiders, single-horned black panthers, brown bears that can eat ores to heal themselves, and even cunning blue wolves that have human intelligence. These beasts, rather than being created for research, are more like special weapons that can be created. Zhen Jin thought for a moment. We didn't just encounter these beasts. Don't forget, we also encountered a flock of sheep. Those sheep are very weak. Sang Su shook his head and insisted. Although the sheep are weak and can be slaughtered by us, but the proportion of creatures like sheep is too small. More importantly, I think, these sheep are more powerful than most magical beasts. Everyone was puzzled by Sang Su's opinion. Sang Su continued to explain, the island master wants to create the strongest biological weapon, but in fact, her technology is not mature. There is one biggest flaw, and that is that the magic power that transforms life can't be coordinated and can't form magic crystals. Therefore, the island master modified the environment and suppressed the operation of elements and magic power. When we are in it, we can't use qi and magic. From this point, we can see the power of the sheep. The magic power in the other magical beasts is chaotic and quickly dissipates after death. But the magic power in the sheep has a tendency to stabilize. Although the temperature rises, the magic power is still chaotic and will quickly dissipate. But when the temperature is low, the magic power in their bodies is restrained and hidden, and we can't even detect it. It was precisely because they couldn't detect it that there was the poisoning of the exploration team. From this, it can be seen that the island master is trying to develop magic crystals. Although she can't directly create them, he seems to be using the food chain of nature to indirectly promote the production of magic crystals. In order to promote the production of magic crystals as soon as possible, as well as to test and train the combat strength of these biological weapons, the island master set up a teleportation array. Every once in a while, after the array is activated, the magical beasts are teleported to fight each other, and the winner will be determined, which is the qualified biological weapon. Of course, Sang Su knew that the magic power in the sheep's bodies was actually brought in by eating the local grass. But this secret still needed to be kept. At this moment, in front of everyone, he deliberately said this. This didn't stop him from expressing his conjecture. To be honest, Zhen Jin was immediately shocked by this conjecture. There is a magic crystal in my heart. How can a human have a magic crystal? This magic crystal is very likely to be accidentally produced when ZD instilled the bear's blood in me to save me in the cave of the brown monkey bear. So, I solved the research problem of the island master. The magic crystal in my heart is actually an artificial magic crystal created indirectly with the help of the island master's power. If the island master finds out, what will happen to me? Sang Su's conjecture also made the others suck in a cold breath. Then what should we do? Maybe the island master has already found out about us, and is just letting us struggle here. That's right, she may be watching us now, using us to test the power of his creations. Then won't we be dead for sure? Why should we continue to struggle? Surrender? Yes, we can surrender. All right. Zhen Jin spoke, forcing himself to be calm and looking serious. It's too early to say this, everything is just a conjecture. We should set off. But everyone's expressions were still flustered and confused. Zhen Jin sighed. Have you seen the island master? Is there any evidence to prove Sang Su's conjecture? If you want to give up, think you're dead for sure, or want to surrender, then do it. But if you want to continue to follow me, then you should go now. This time, everyone no longer hesitated and chose to follow closely behind Zhen Jin. Chapter 58. Not long after the exploration team left the Golden Stones, someone was horrified to discover that the Scorpion Horde had followed them again. Their hopes were dashed. Facts proved that Zhen Jin's previous approach was correct. The young knight sighed inwardly. Sang Su's speculation made him panic in his heart, but on the surface, his expression was calm and composed. Don't worry, the scorpions have just eaten their fill, and we are not on their food list. That Scorpion King will continue to fight alone with me. As long as I don't fall, all of you will be safe. Everyone was successfully comforted by Jinjin. The group continued to move forward in the desert. They had to cherish the early morning. This was a good opportunity to hurry on their journey. Logically speaking, this was only an island. The island was divided into many kinds of landforms, and the desert on the island should not be large. As long as they were determined in one direction and kept moving forward, they would be able to walk out of this nightmare. However, the people who were in it felt different. Yellow sand that filled the sky. Sand dunes, undulating sand dunes. The identical scene made it easy for people to think that they had not traveled far. The desert seemed to be endless. No matter how they walked, they could not reach the end. Their physical strength was rapidly depleted. Just after morning, the exploration team members felt hungry. There was really too little food. Confusion and despair were inevitable, and they could not help but grow in everyone's hearts. Every time this happened, the exploration team members' gazes would be cast on Jinjin. Jinjin led the way at the front. He was just a teenager, and his figure was not taller than the others. However, the exploration team members often drew courage from Jinjin's thin back. This courage fought against the confusion and despair in their hearts. The sun gradually rose, and the temperature of the desert rose rapidly. Sweat began to appear on the foreheads of the exploration team members. About 2 to 3 hours later, the silver spear scorpion suddenly let out an ear-piercing shriek. Its scorpion feet quickly gathered the sand under its feet, and it left the scorpion horde, charging towards the exploration team. "It's coming!" The exploration team was in an uproar, but they immediately calmed down. Because Jinjin was already prepared, he immediately stopped and turned around, facing the spear scorpion. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle, just like yesterday. After fighting for a while, the silver spear scorpion took the initiative to retreat and leave the battle. Jinjin panted heavily and did not pursue. The young knight's mood became heavier and heavier. Is it just my imagination? I keep feeling that this scorpion's shell is harder than before. Is it because I've lost too much of my spider blade, or did the spear scorpion's carapace thicken after eating? Jinjin was getting more and more helpless against this spear scorpion. Every slash he made on the scorpion's shell only left a white mark. Furthermore, the marks were getting fainter and fainter. Unless I mutate and turn into sharp bear claws. Otherwise, with just this weapon in my hand, there's no way I can threaten spear scorpion. Also, my stamina is weakening. Jinjin could clearly feel this. Previously, when he was fighting with the silver spear scorpion, he was able to move around and had a lot of stamina. Now, the battle would only last for a short while, and his breathing would become rapid and his limbs would become weak. Over the past few days, Jinjin hadn't been able to eat or sleep well. He hadn't had any effective rest at all. He was like the spider blade in his hand, which had already seen its limit. Compared to the spear scorpion and other ferocious beasts, there was a racial difference and weakness. Against spear scorpion, Needle Gold used his weakness to attack the enemy's strength. Fortunately, as a leader, the spear scorpion seemed to be very cautious. Every time it fought with Jinjin for a while, it seemed to realize that it was difficult to take down Jinjin, so it retreated temporarily. According to Tsang Su, this might be the spear scorpion's hunting technique. Every battle weakened Jinjin a little. After accumulating, Jinjin was finally exhausted to the limit, and it was difficult for him to explode at the moment of death. This might be the survival technique of the scorpion horde. However, for Jinjin, it was something to be thankful for. The scorpion's habit gave him a chance to catch his breath. After 4 such battles, the sun rose to the highest point in the sky. At noon, the sun was extremely fierce. The sea of sand under their feet was steaming hot. The members of the exploration team felt like fish and shrimp on a red-hot iron plate. For the sake of long-term consideration, Everyone could only avoid the sun and temporarily catch their breath in the limited shadows behind a sand dune. The scorpion horde was also afraid of the scorching sun and stopped attacking. Under the witness of the exploration team, these scorpions waved their pincers, twisted their bodies, and burrowed into the depths of the sand. This kind of good way to avoid the summer heat made the members of the exploration team express their envy. "Do you think these scorpions will ambush us from underground?" Someone expressed his worry. "Then let them come. I've had enough of this kind of damn life." Someone sat on the ground weakly. Sang-soo still maintained his rationality and analyzed. "The scorpion's body is there. If they want to crawl out, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. We will definitely discover it first. This is not their hunting method. Think about it, how did they deal with those green lizards?" Only then did everyone relax. ZD began to distribute the food, which could be considered today's lunch. Everyone only had a small portion of dry food, which was less than half the size of a palm. Fortunately, the water reserves were relatively sufficient. However, under Sang-soo's guidance, everyone pursed their lips and stopped after 2 or 3 sips. Then, they carefully stuffed the stopper and tied the water bag tightly to their waist. They cherished it as if it was the most valuable treasure in the world. Among everyone, Zhenjin had the most food. After all, he consumed the most energy and was the biggest guarantee for everyone's safety. Even so, this food was far from enough for Zhenjin. The young knight could only eat in small bites, as if eating like this could give his stomach the illusion that he had eaten more. During the meal, Zhenjin was also secretly observing the team. At present, although everyone was haggard and tired, their lips were dry and cracked, and their eyes were dim, their emotions were generally stable. Bai Yu's face was the palest. His arm was broken when he resisted the lizards and was currently tied up, but the pain was still tormenting the young man. The old scholar Sang-soo was gently tapping his calf with his hand. He was relaxing his muscles. To be honest, with his body, it was already very surprising that he could last until now. Finally, Zhenjin came to ZD's side. "How are you?" he asked softly. "I'm fine." ZD shook her head. Her amethyst-like eyes were filled with determination. She had a magic robe on her, which should have the function of adjusting the temperature. However, on this island, it seemed to be ineffective and could not isolate the heat. This caused ZD's forehead to be dripping with sweat. Her beautiful hair was wet and condensed into strands. This was not a good sign. Excessive sweating would cause the body's water content to rapidly decrease. In the long run, people would die of dehydration. Jin Zhen's heart gave birth to a feeling of love and pity. He knew the reason. Everyone had water and dry food, but most of the food was concentrated in one place, on ZD's body. This put a burden on ZD, increasing her physical strength to walk. There were many reasons for this. While Zhenjin was resisting the scorpions, he was also on guard against the people in the same group. Hunger and thirst were unbearable, the instinct to survive was extremely strong, it could make people crazy and take risks out of desperation. The food and water reserves maintained this small group, and also maintained Zhenjin's authority. Zhenjin did not feel at ease leaving it to other people. ZD was the one he trusted the most. At the same time, ZD's medicine also had a huge deterrent effect. "Lord Zhenjin, I will not let you down. It's just that." "Sir, what about you?" ZD looked at Zhenjin with concern. The girl was very smart. She knew that when the two of them were together, Zhenjin had taken care of the main luggage. But now, Zhenjin had handed all these things to her. It was obvious that the battle with the silver spear scorpion had exhausted him. "I'm fine. I can still hold on." Zhenjin smiled and raised his voice slightly. "Don't forget my strength. I will only fall if you fall. I will definitely be the last one to fall." Hearing this, everyone naturally felt relieved. But at this moment, a member of the exploration team, suddenly fell to the ground and did not get up again. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked over. The person who had fainted was Baya. Baya! The nearest member of the exploration team hurriedly went over, trying to wake him up. However, when he touched his forehead, he immediately shouted, "It's so hot! He has a high fever." It was not good to have a high fever, especially when there was a lack of divine spells and medicine to treat it. A group of people surrounded Baya. Baya was very popular. In fact, he was the most popular person in the team. This son of the hunter had helped everyone a lot when they were poisoned. Not only that, when they were hunting the flying squirrel beasts, his archery skills had also helped the team a lot. However, he was now unconscious and could not be woken up no matter what. "Everyone, make way." Sang-Soo walked over, and everyone immediately made way for a small open space. "Let me try." Soon, ZD also made a move. It was not until Jinjin put his water bag to Baya's mouth and poured a lot of water that Baya's eyes finally opened a crack. He did not have the strength to speak. Instead, he pointed at his chest. He looked very weak. Sang-Soo was the first to understand Baya's meaning. He immediately reached out and took out a few letters from Baya's chest pocket. Seeing Sang-Soo take out the letters, Baya's eyes seemed to sparkle. He pointed at the letters again and then fainted again. "Baya, Baya." No matter what, Baya was completely unconscious this time. Is he on his last legs? Damn it, of all times, it has to happen now. I think this kid knows he's dying. These letters must have his last words. This kid can read? Isn't he the son of a hunter? Generally speaking, only nobles, mages, clergy, scholars and so on were literate. These people only made up a small part of the empire's population. Most of them were illiterate. Everyone was discussing, and their faces showed worry, doubt, and hesitation. Baya's body is very strong. He fainted because of his injuries. He was injured because of Sang-Soo, someone said. Thus, many gazes were focused on Sang-Soo. Sang-Soo was silent, as if he did not notice the anger around him. That's enough. Jinjin killed the signs of the conflict before it even started. He looked up at the sky. Although the sun is still strong, it's best that we move to a nearby place. Don't stay in one place for too long. The scorpions are still hiding underground. Yes, sir. Understood, Lord Jinjin. Then what about Baya? Someone asked. Jinjin blurted out without hesitation, "Of course we'll take him with us. I'm a holy knight. I've said it before, I won't give up on anyone. I'll do my best to save everyone." Everyone's hearts trembled and they suddenly calmed down. Chapter 59. When Baya fell, everyone was worried and angry, not only because of Baya's popularity, but also because of fear. They were afraid that they would become the next Baya, fall into a coma and resign themselves to fate. But now, Jinjin's actions made everyone understand that the young knight in front of them possessed the true virtues of a knight. The sand dunes were continuous, rising and falling one after another. There was no stretcher, so Baya was carried on the backs of people in turn. Soon, the group moved to the back of another sand dune. Sensing the movement, the scorpions emerged from the ground and followed the group to the new location, then burrowed back into the sand. After they burrow into the sand, it seems that they can't directly change their position underground, Sang-Soo analyzed. This was good news, but it was not much better. If everyone had mounts and was fast enough, they might be able to shake off the scorpions and get rid of them. But the current situation was that the group was exhausted, and their speed could not compare to the scorpions. Moreover, there was an injured person who was unconscious, greatly slowing down the group's pace. After noon, before evening, Jinjin led the group and set off again. The scorpions quickly appeared behind the group. The silver spear scorpion came out of the crowd and engaged in a fierce battle with Jinjin again. The battle lasted for a while, then it retreated. Zhenjin watched helplessly as it retreated, unable to do anything about it. The cracks on the spider blade had expanded a lot, and Zhenjin did not know how long this weapon could last. Without it, the situation would become very bad. Ordinary iron swords were no threat to the scorpion shell. This kind of battle happened a few more times, and the group gradually became numb from fear. Dusk came, and the sun sank near the horizon. The sky was dark, and the group's state of mind sank. Is there really no other way? Lady ZD, is there any medicine that can kill these damned scorpions? ZD shook her head. If there was, she would have used it long ago. Why don't we just stay here and perish together with these damned scorpions? Someone said irritably. That's what I'm thinking, someone agreed. There were also people who objected in a mocking tone. Perish together? You're thinking too much. If we rush forward, we will only be cut in half by that silver tear magical beast. What do you mean? What do you mean? The members of the exploration team were furious and looked at each other unhappily. Another person placed Baya on the ground and sat down. He complained, Hey, if you have the time and energy to quarrel, why don't you help me carry this guy? This kid is too heavy. It's good that he's asleep. He doesn't have to travel on his own. That's great. The quarreling duo looked at the person on the ground. One of them snorted, It's not like I haven't carried him before. I've carried him more than you. It's only been a while, and you can't take it anymore? The other man glanced at Sang-Soo from the corner of his eyes and said sarcastically, In my opinion, the one who should carry Baya on his back is an old man. Baya was seriously injured because he was trying to save someone. Without this injury, he would still be alive and kicking. The commotion in the team began to spread from the quarrel between the two people. If it were any other time, they would have respected Sang-Soo very much. After all, Sang-Soo's knowledge had helped them a lot. But now, in a desperate situation, everyone was restless and fearful. They did not dare to target Zhenjin or ZD. They subconsciously turned their anger, panic, and other emotions into words and gazes, attacking the weakest old man in the team. Most importantly, Baya had indeed fallen into such a situation because he had saved Sang-Soo. According to morality, Sang-Soo should indeed be criticized. Therefore, as everyone quarreled, they focused their firepower on Sang-Soo. Sang-Soo remained expressionless under the mocking gazes that harbored ill intentions. Hey, old man, what do you think? Tell me. The silent Sang-Soo made people feel that he was weak. Finally, someone chased after Sang-Soo and provoked him. Sang-Soo's lips curled into a sneer. Then, he glanced at the team members who provoked him with a mocking gaze. Baya's coma is actually a good thing. Everyone was stunned. Sang-Soo continued, It's a critical moment. In an instant the air seemed to freeze. The people who surrounded Sang-Soo widened their eyes in shock. What did you say? Someone shouted. Zhenjin and ZD were also in disbelief. Sang-Soo, on the other hand, was very calm. His aged eyes were deep and cold. Hee, why are you looking at me like that? Baya can't hold on any longer, anyone can see that. How can you say that? Yes, he's our companion. What about us? Everyone shouted, their voices sharp. Old man, are you a devil in human skin? Someone even walked up to Sang-Soo and looked down at Sang-Soo, pressuring him with his gaze. Sang-Soo asked in return, not afraid at all. The current situation is that we are seriously short of food. Without food, we won't have any stamina. Without stamina, we will definitely be killed by the scorpions in the end. At that point, Baya will be dead for sure. In fact, he's already dead. This is the desert. We don't have priests or potions. Even if there are priests, low-level magic and battle energy are strictly prohibited on this island. Where are we going to find a high-ranking priest? So, we have a better chance of escaping. The exploration team member who was staring at Sang-Soo was furious. He grabbed the old man's collar and lifted him up. "You're still talking." Song Su snorted and waved his arm. With a slap, the exploration team member's arm was knocked away. The exploration team member was caught off guard and took 2 steps back. He looked at Song Su in surprise. The strength of the old man in front of him seemed to be beyond his expectations. Song Su adjusted his collar and said slowly, "You've read too little. Now I'll tell you a principle. There's an insect called a mantis. A male mantis mates with a female mantis. That night, the female mantis eats the male mantis to replenish her nutrients so that she can give birth to offspring more smoothly. A few years ago, don't be tied down. For any life form, the most basic thing is survival and reproduction. If we can't even guarantee our own survival, what law and morality are we talking about? Besides, what kind of people are you? Others don't know, but don't you know? Our ship is heading to the Orc continent. There's going to be a war there. Who would go there at this time?" Song Su sneered and finally concluded, "Surviving is more important than anything, isn't it?" No one spoke, and the entire team fell into a dead silence. Many people were still glaring at Song Su, but their gazes were no longer as angry and hateful as before. "Song Su, please take back your words. Baya is definitely not food, but our companion." Zhen Jin frowned with a stern expression. "As you wish, my Lord Knight." Song Su's collar was tidied up. He bowed to Zhen Jin. His etiquette was very proper, and his movements were so standard that there was nothing wrong with them. As expected of a steward who had served the nobles for most of his life. The extreme heat made Zhuang Zhao open his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot, and his mind was in a mess. After waking up for a long time, he gradually reacted. He was lying at the foot of a dune, and beside him was an unconscious man. It was his brother, Lan Zhao. The cyanobacteria was motionless, still unconscious. His condition was getting worse and worse. Originally, only his lips were dry and cracked, but now his skin was peeling from the sun. Although he was still breathing, the rise and fall of his chest was obviously weaker than yesterday. Zhuang Zhao tried to sit up. He immediately felt a violent dizziness, and hurriedly used his hands to support his body. "I also have a fever." He touched his forehead, and suddenly his heart sank. He thought back. The night in the desert was extremely cold, and he was extremely tired. He could only sleep on the spot. He relied on the cyanobacteria, using the body heat from his high fever to resist the cold. But he still failed. He fell asleep, and when he woke up, it was already noon. Zhuang Zhao felt waves of fear. He was very glad that he did not encounter any hunting beasts during his sleep. But what now? Zhuang Zhao still had some dry food on him, but he had no water. Most of his water was used to wash Lan Zhao's wounds, and he had already drunk the rest. He was not only trying to survive by himself, but he also had to carry an adult man who was heavier than him. After sitting on the sand for a long time, Zhuang Zhao slowly carried Lan Zhao on his back, and continued on his journey. However, Zhuang Zhao's heart was filled with confusion, panic, annoyance, and despair, and it was difficult to get rid of them. The exhaustion, hunger, and dizziness of his body were like thorns, binding his body. The thorns of the thorns were deeply embedded in his flesh and bones, making it so that every time he took a step forward, it would affect these numerous wounds. "Water, water," behind him, Lan Zhao began to unconsciously murmur. Zhuang Zhao abruptly stopped in his tracks. He didn't know why, but a strong feeling of anger and hatred welled up in his heart. "Stop talking, you're so annoying. If you weren't injured, we would definitely have water right now. In this situation, where can I find water for you to drink? I also want to drink water, I also want to." Zhuang Zhao did not care that his throat was so dry that it was about to emit smoke, and shouted to vent his anger. However, Lan Zhao could not hear him. He continued to murmur, thirsting for water. Zhuangzheo's eyes widened. A wave of hostility surged from his heart, rising to his forehead, and then instantly covering his face. He suddenly let go of Lan Zhao and threw him to the ground. "Stop shouting!" he shouted at Lan Zhao. His eyes were filled with anger, but also carried a cruel and cold viciousness. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and his breathing became heavier and heavier. Killing intent grew in Zhuangzheo's heart, and then it strangely grew rapidly. Zhuangzheo stared at Lan Zhao for a long time. His Adam's apple moved subconsciously, and his eyes were filled with the green light of a hungry wolf. Hunger filled his heart and mind, making it impossible for him to think. His survival instinct constantly reminded him to ignore Lan Zhao's identity. It made him see every piece of flesh on Lan Zhao's body, and every fresh blood flowing in his body. "This is food." Zhuangzheo slowly approached, slowly bent down, and then half knelt on the ground, stretching out his hands. His hands reached for Lan Zhao. His movements were very slow, as if he were carrying heavy hammers. His hands were still trembling. At first, it was only a slight tremble, but the closer he got to Lan Zhao, the more his hands trembled. Suddenly, Zhuangzheo noticed that Lan Zhao's eyelids were trembling slightly. Immediately, the cyanobacterium slowly opened its eyes a slit. "Brother, you're awake!" Zhuangzheo shouted. His joy surged, covering the sky and covering the earth. It was like a tsunami, covering his entire body and submerging him. The hunger, thirst, savagery, despair, and madness from before were like a mirage, all of it like a dream. Lan Zhao was in a trance. His eyes turned imperceptibly, and then he saw Zhuangzheo kneeling in front of him. The dazzling sunlight was blocked by Zhuangzheo's body. Lan Zhao's head just happened to be in Zhuangzheo's shadow. Lan Zhao's lips opened and closed. "Brother, what did you say?" Zhuangzheo's body and mind trembled. He immediately lay in front of Lan Zhao and put his ear to Lan Zhao's mouth. Then, he heard an extremely weak voice. I can't take it anymore. Don't drag yourself down for me. There's no food or water. Brother, you just eat me." These words exhausted all of Lan Zhao's strength, and he fainted again. When Zhuangzheo heard these words, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. His pupils instantly shrank to the size of a needle tip, and his entire body froze. It was as if he had become a stone statue. He stretched his neck, stuck out his ears, and knelt on the ground. His hands were clasped in the sand, and he maintained a twisted and strange posture for a long time. Finally, his blank mind began to slowly turn again. He reacted. He retracted his neck, still half kneeling on the ground, but straightened his upper body. He looked at Lan Zhao, who was lying on the sand, and his vision quickly became blurry. Tears accumulated in his eyes, and then flowed out in large droplets, streaking across his dust-covered face, forming 2 black tear stains. "Brother, brother!" he called out loudly. The guilt, annoyance, self-blame, and other emotions in his heart blocked his nose and throat, making it difficult for him to breathe. "You're my only family. Me! I won't do that. I won't do that!" He was shouting, but it also seemed like he was swearing. Then, he put the cyanobacteria on his back again and started his journey again with unsteady step, with a face full of determination. Chapter 60. The wind whistled, bringing with it surging heat. In front of them was a strange scene. The yellow sand and the red hard soil clearly intersected, and the landscape here was abruptly changed. The traces of human intervention were very obvious. Zhenjin and the others were in the middle of the desert, and not far from them, there was a red land, without a single grain of yellow sand. "This is like the scene after a volcanic eruption," Sang Su exclaimed. Zidi's nose twitched. The air is also filled with the smell of sulfur. Poochie. Suddenly, the black ground not far away suddenly emitted grayish-white smoke. Then, a stream of crimson lava spurted out like a fountain. Like molten iron, the magma sprayed around, setting off a large amount of smoke. Everyone frowned. In the air, the smell of sulfur was even stronger, bringing a great deal of irritation to their nasal cavities. If we were to be splashed by the magma, wouldn't we be dead? Everyone, including Jinjin, had a stern look on their faces. I thought the desert was the most dangerous place, but I didn't expect there to be such a dangerous place on this island. Compared to it, the desert is more acceptable. Lord Jinjin, what should we do next? Everyone was at a loss. The young knight had always been their backbone. The original plan was to leave the desert. Now that their goal had been achieved, the result seemed to have become even worse. The direction was right, and there should be no mistakes. Previously, when the exploration team was trapped in the desert, they persevered in this direction and finally walked out. It seems that the starting point of our teleportation is too different from what we imagined. Around the desert landscape, there is a forest landscape and a volcanic landscape. Sang-Soo analyzed. Jinjin nodded slightly, and a light flashed through his eyes. This is actually a good thing, everyone. As soon as he opened his mouth, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. This is a volcanic landscape. It is indeed very dangerous, even more terrifying than the desert. But there is usually an opportunity in the risk. Think about it, everyone. We are in danger here, and so are those spear scorpions. Their body structure is adapted to the desert environment, but here, can they burrow into the ground? The magma flowing underground will destroy them. Will there be gold hemp stones here? Most probably not. Even if there was, it would have been melted by the lava. What do the scorpions eat if they don't have gold hemp? The morale of the team was greatly boosted. Jinjin's words were indeed reasonable. Let's go in. This is our chance to get rid of the scorpions, Jinjin ordered. The exploration team continued to move forward and officially entered the volcanic landscape. Half a day later, clang! The spider blade ruthlessly struck the silver spear scorpion's head, exploding with a loud metallic sound. Jinjin retreated, avoiding the pincer attack of the giant pincers. A white mark was imprinted on the silver spear scorpion's head. Jinjin's attack did not break the golden armor of the silver spear scorpion. The silver spear scorpion retreated and stopped fighting. A large group of spear scorpions immediately gathered around it, surrounding and protecting their leader. Jinjin's hands were numb and his arms were trembling slightly. He stood in place with his back straight, but in reality, his legs were constantly feeling weak. A fierce battle had caused him to reach his physical limit again. Fortunately, the spear scorpions had retreated. The scorpions surrounded the silver spear scorpion and kept retreating. After reaching a certain distance, they stopped again. The situation was the same as in the desert. The exploration team entered the volcanic landscape, and the scorpions were not forced to retreat by the terrain. They still followed. After confirming that it was safe for the time being, Jinjin turned around and returned to the team. The team members' expressions were very ugly. Damn it, these scorpions are definitely going to eat us. Their food is obviously gold hemp, but they keep following us. Isn't this too aggressive? Didn't Sang-Soo have a guest before? This should be specially arranged by the island master. Being aggressive is the biggest advantage of biological weapons. Seeing Jinjin return, the discussion stopped. Immediately, someone went up to him. Sir, the scorpions are still following behind us. What should we do? Jinjin's expression was cold. He stretched out his hand and pointed to the dark giant shadow in the northwest direction. Let's go up the mountain. It was a dark and low mountain. It was very likely to be an active volcano. No one objected to Jinjin. At this moment, in this team, the young knight was the one who meant what he said. After all, everyone's lives were on his shoulders. The closer they got to the Black Mountain, the higher the temperature in the air. The ground under their feet was soft. Even through their boots, it was very hot. It was as if they had been placed in hot water of more than 50 degrees. Many people's feet had blisters. The ground here was black. Some places were high and some places had become pit. According to Tsang Su's guess, after the volcanic eruption, the magma flowed and spread. After cooling down, it formed such a ground. The scorpions were obviously more resistant to heat than humans. They followed the exploration team up the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, Zhenjin and the others found a cave. Jin sends a man into the cave to check it out. Investigating was a very risky thing. Zhenjin did not want to take the risk. If there were any monsters living in the cave, they would undoubtedly be more dangerous than the scorpions if they could survive in such an environment. The team member entered the cave and walked carefully. After walking for more than 10 meters, he saw the mountain wall. There's no life here. It's very safe for now. After receiving the report, the entire team entered the cave. The cave was very hot. There were many air holes on the cave walls, ground, and ceiling. From time to time, some smoke would spurt out. The smoke contained a large amount of water, as well as powdered sulfur. Zhenjin's vision was greatly affected by the smoke. He had only entered the cave for a short while when he felt a slight stinging pain in his eyes. As for the others, their eyes were already red. Walking to the bottom of the cave, the extremely hot environment made many people sweat. The long journey had consumed the energy and physical strength of the exploration team members, so much so that some of them felt dizzy. For a moment, it was difficult for them to adapt to the environment here. "Sir, let's hurry up and leave. I feel like I can't hold on any longer. We can't spend the night here at all." Zhenjin looked around with a determined expression, but he rejected in a clear voice, "No, this place is ideal. We won't spend the night here, but we have to fight against those scorpions here." The scorpions could not get rid of them, and the young knight had already made up his mind to fight. He came here to create a battlefield that was beneficial to him. Everyone was stunned. Zhenjin turned his head and smiled. "Didn't you notice on the way here? Those spear scorpions seemed to be very afraid of the smoke here." Everyone recalled and their spirits were lifted. Someone blurted out, "That's right, they avoided the smoke all the way. I'm afraid the smoke is very harmful to them. That's why they never got close." Tsang Su frowned. Logically speaking, scorpions and spiders have breathing organs. On both sides of the front of the abdomen, there are one or more pairs of sac-like structures called air chambers. There are 15 to 20 thin sheets in the air chambers, formed by the folds of the body wall. They are like the pages of a book, so they are also called book lungs. When the blood flows through the book lungs, it exchanges gas with the air inside, absorbing new air, and at the same time, expelling the exhaust gas in the body and completing the breathing process. However, based on their behavior of staying away from the smoke, we can't judge the true extent of the smoke's harm to them. It's also possible that they just hate it, and the smoke isn't such a fatal threat to them. It's indeed possible. Zhenjin sighed. But we've already reached our limit. Who can continue the long journey? There was silence around. Zhenjin told the truth. Everyone's physical strength had reached the limit of collapse. 5 or 6 hours ago, they had already relied on their fear of death and their desire for life to hold on. If there were no scorpions behind them, the exploration team members would have collapsed on the ground and stopped moving. Zhenjin paused for a moment and continued, "Our food is about to run out." The youth looked at ZD. ZD immediately understood and showed the package in front of everyone. The food reserves in the package were less than everyone had expected. "You can use the potion to corrode the cave wall, right?" Zhenjin asked again. "I should be able to. It's not a big problem. But I still need to test it to be sure," ZD answered very seriously. Under everyone's gaze, the girl took out the potion and splashed it on the cave wall. The walls of the cave immediately melted like a burning candle. Zhenjin looked at this strange scene. It was this potion that allowed ZD and the others to avoid the sandstorm. The air became even more unpleasant, almost making people want to vomit. However, after more than 10 breaths, the original cave wall had disappeared, and the entire cave had gone deeper by more than 10 steps. Zhenjin finally heaved a sigh of relief. Using such a potion, they could create a combat terrain in this cave that was beneficial to them. Chapter 61. All the food was distributed. Only a small part of the water was left. The food would basically be eaten up. The exploration team members sat at the entrance of the cave and ate silently. Some of them had solemn expressions, while some looked at the scorpions with strong killing intent in their eyes. Everyone knew that the next step was the final battle. As if sensing the different killing intent of the exploration team members, the scorpions were also ready to move, emitting strange and ear-piercing hisses. As usual, Zhenjin ate the most food. Every piece of food was carefully chewed by him, then rolled down his throat, down his esophagus, and into his stomach. This simple process brought Zhenjin an indescribable sense of happiness. His stomach was already hungry and thirsty. It was like a bottomless pit, swallowing everything that entered it. Soon, Zhenjin felt that his physical strength had recovered a lot. But at the same time, his stomach was still wriggling violently. It was sending a signal to its master. I want more food. But there was no more. Zhenjin stood up, jumped a few times, and arrived in front of the scorpions. The silver spear scorpion sensed Zhenjin's fighting spirit and immediately stepped out of the crowd. But this time, Zhenjin did not tangle with it. Instead, he suddenly jumped into the middle of the scorpions. He descended from the sky and landed on the back of an ordinary spear scorpion, piercing its head with his sword. This unlucky spear scorpion let out a shrill hiss, and its body twisted crazily, like a wild horse with an extremely fierce nature. Then, yellowish-brown blood spread all over the ground, and it soon stopped moving. The spear scorpions all froze for a moment, as if they were stunned by Zhenjin's sudden assassination. Then, in the next moment, as if they had poked a hornet's nest, the entire group of scorpions let out a terrifying hiss and pounced on Zhenjin crazily. The silver spear scorpion was the most violent among them. Zhenjin laughed and jumped out before the scorpions could surround him. Then, he quickly ran away. The scorpions chased after him closely. In their fury, they burst out with astonishing speed. If it was in a desert or grassland, Zhenjin would be caught up very quickly. But on this volcano, Zhenjin could jump to high places. Because the scorpion's body was too low and flat, it could only climb up diagonally, which gave Zhenjin a lot of opportunities. Seeing that they could not catch up with Zhenjin for the time being, some of the spear scorpions changed their target and attacked the exploration team members at the entrance of the cave. The previous tacit understanding had been broken by Zhenjin. The attack of the scorpions carried a strong sense of revenge. Enter the cave. The exploration team was already prepared. They quickly turned around and entered the cave behind them. The spear scorpions chased after them relentlessly. After entering the cave, they were immediately stuck at the small hole inside. The small hole was specially made with corrosive chemicals. A person could enter it, but the scorpion's body was too big. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the members of the exploration team in the small hole raised their arms. For a moment, the swords and knives were drawn together, ruthlessly stabbing the body of the spear scorpion. The scorpion shell was tough enough to withstand the stab. Its huge pincers were also constantly waving, constantly bombarding the walls of the cave, making loud banging sounds. Cracks appeared on the walls of the small hole, and there were more and more of them. Retreat! Sensing that this small hole was about to collapse, the exploration team members immediately retreated into a deeper hole. In about 10 breaths of time, the first small hole collapsed with a loud bang. The spear scorpion let out a high-pitched hiss and rushed in. However, it immediately discovered that there were 5 or 6 small holes in front of it, and each small hole was emitting the scent of a human. The spear scorpion was not intelligent enough. Without hesitation, it randomly chose one and continued to smash it with its huge pincers. At this moment, swords and knives stabbed out from the surrounding small holes. The scorpion shell on the back of the spear scorpion was the toughest, and its abdomen was relatively soft. This time, the swords and knives kept stabbing the spear scorpion's abdomen. The spear scorpion could not hold on any longer. Its scorpion shell was pierced, and yellowish-brown blood flowed out of its wound. It wanted to retreat, but it was very difficult to turn around in the cave. Moreover, there were companions behind it, blocking its escape route. Not long after, it died under the swords and knives. Seeing the death of its companion, the spear scorpion behind it became even more violent. It waved its huge pincers and smashed the corpse of the spear scorpion in front of it, charging in. The exploration team members did the same and killed the second spear scorpion. If it was a head-on confrontation, the exploration team would have long been wiped out. However, after using the correct tactics, they did not lose members. "Let's do it like this. We can kill them." The morale of the exploration team members was greatly boosted. The third spear scorpion crawled in and quickly fell into the predicament of its previous companion. It was quickly injured and let out a painful hiss. Then, it swung its scorpion tail and easily pierced through the cave wall. One of the exploration team members in the small hole did not expect that his entire chest would be pierced through. Bright red blood spurted out and he died on the spot. The strong smell of blood stimulated both sides to become even crazier. It turned out that the fight and struggle of the 2 spear scorpions had caused the cave wall to collapse a lot and the space to expand. Only then did the third spear scorpion have room to swing its scorpion tail. The scorpion tail was the spear scorpion's strongest weapon, and the exploration team's swords and knives were limited in length. To stab the spear scorpion, they had to be close to the small hole. Every time the scorpion tail stabbed out, it was possible to end the life of an exploration team member. Die! Kill, kill! Die, die! The exploration team members were all in a frenzy. None of them ran away. In this kind of terrain, even if they wanted to escape, there was nowhere to escape. In the open area, they did not have Jinjin's physical fitness. Even in the mountains, they would be easily hunted down by the spear scorpions. If they could not escape, then they could only kill them head-on and get rid of the scorpions. Only then could they survive. Moreover, the exploration team members knew that there was no food. Only by killing these spear scorpions would they have a source of food. It was a hopeless situation. There was no way out. They could only charge forward and carve out a bloody path. That was the consensus of everyone. The situation on the battlefield gradually tilted in favor of the spear scorpions. As time passed, the exploration team members who had erupted quickly became weak. Their attacks weakened, and it became more and more difficult for them to resist the spear scorpions' wild attacks. Those were ordinary spear scorpions, and their strength was far greater than that of humans. Although the corroded cave walls were strong, they could not withstand the continuous bombardment of the giant pincers for long. In order to create a favorable terrain, ZD had used up all the potions in her hands. The favorable terrain was limited, and there were more spear scorpions. The exploration team kept retreating. The small cave's terrain was destroyed one after another, and they finally reached their limit. They had no way out. One team member after another died in battle. The exploration team's casualties soared, and the casualties were heavy. ZD's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. A scorpion tail was like the tip of a charging knight's spear. It directly pierced through the small cave wall, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of the girl. At the moment of life and death, the shadow of a sword flashed. The scorpion tail was directly cut off, brushing past ZD's ear and shooting diagonally into the cave wall behind the girl. It was very close to the ground in the cave. Baya, who was unconscious, was lying there. The scorpion tail spear was only 2 or 3 fingers away from his head. "Sir, you're back." ZD had narrowly escaped death. The stimulation of death made her grab Jinjin's hand. The young girl's face didn't even have time to reveal a pleasantly surprised expression before it was replaced by worry. "Ah, sir, you're injured," ZD exclaimed. Jinjin's body was covered in bright red blood. The spear scorpion's blood was yellowish-brown, and the source of the blood was obvious. Jinjin patted the girl's hand. "Don't worry, it's just a small injury." He scanned the surroundings. The exploration team's casualties shocked him. Only ZD, Sang-soo, and the unconscious Baya were left in the entire exploration team. If he had come one step later, he would have to collect everyone's corpses. Jinjin had already done his best. In order to get rid of the silver spear scorpions, he even paid the price of minor injuries. But when he killed his way back to the cave, the exploration team's casualties still made him very sad and disappointed. "Quick, let's hurry up and get out of here." Jinjin carried Baya on his back. ZD and Sang-soo followed closely behind. However, just as they reached the entrance of the cave, they saw the silver spear scorpions leading a group of scorpions, surrounding the cave. ZD and Sang-soo's faces were pale. Jinjin's face was also quite ugly. "Retreat." The young knight gritted his teeth. His mouth was full of bitterness. The exploration team paid a terrible price, but their last fight did not succeed. Compared to the pterosaur group, the scorpions were too strong. The silver spear scorpions pounced forward. Jinjin used the limited terrain to fight them. The spear scorpion leader's body was larger than ordinary spear scorpions, making it difficult for it to turn around in the cave. Even waving its pincers was difficult. Jinjin made it suffer. The silver spear scorpions retreated from the cave and let out a hissing sound. Under its command, none of the spear scorpions went back into the cave. They just surrounded the entrance of the cave. Night fell quickly. The scorpions lay motionless at the entrance of the cave, as if they were hibernating. But sometimes they made rustling sounds. In the cave, Jinjin's wound had been properly bandaged. ZD looked at the pile of spear scorpions' corpses with an ugly expression. "These can't be eaten. Their flesh and blood contain very small metal particles. Humans were not spear scorpions. They could not digest metal particles. If they ate these, their kidneys and other digestive systems would die. So, there was only food left, and only 2 bags of water." ZD rummaged through her small leather bag. The originally full bag of potions had long dried up. Without the basic materials, even with such a large pile of spear scorpion corpses, she could not make any new potions. After a while, the girl's shoulders twitched and she cried softly. "There's no other way. I can't think of any other way." This strong girl finally broke down emotionally. Jinjin gently pulled her into his arms. "I've disappointed you. I can't make any potions that can help you, sir." ZD sobbed. Jinjin shook his head and sighed. "It's okay. You've already done very well. It's all thanks to you that I'm able to live until now and reach this place. You can't use low-level magic here. It's been hard on you all this time." "No, it's me. I've dragged you down, Lord Jinjin. If it wasn't for my suggestion, we wouldn't have sneaked onto this ship. We wouldn't have ended up on this island. When we encountered the lizards and spear scorpions, you could have abandoned me and survived on your own." At this point, ZD suddenly realized something. She raised her head and looked at Jinjin with her amethyst-like eyes. She begged, "Sir, please leave. Don't worry about me anymore. You can leave this place." Jinjin smiled with a hint of affection. He brushed away a strand of hair that covered ZD's eyes. "You're my fiancé. I'm your knight. It's my responsibility to protect you. I'll protect you until the end of my life." Chapter 62. Sang-soo looked at him in surprise. It was the first time he heard this secret. It turned out that ZD and Zhenjin had such a close relationship. Lord Zhenjin, you are a true knight. The old scholar expressed his heartfelt admiration. Your noble conduct has always been our spiritual banner since we started working together. We may still have hope. These scorpion tails are very sharp. According to your strength, throwing scorpion tails is likely to cause fatal damage to the spear scorpions. We can rely on the cave and launch attacks from time to time. When the spear scorpions attack, we will hide inside. Sang-soo proposed a good tactic. Zhenjin's recovered memory made him very good at throwing weapons. Sang-soo had a deep impression of it when he killed the flying squirrels. But Zhenjin shook his head slightly and said frankly, "It may be very small. Without the enhancement of fighting energy, he killed the flying squirrels because of the mutation, which made his arms swell and burst out strength beyond Zhenjin's current physical limit. But now, the young knight seemed to have lost the ability to mutate. Whether it was provoking the scorpions before, breaking through the lizard nest, or the fierce battle with the silver spear scorpion not long ago, there was a life and death crisis. Zhenjin relied on his fighting skills to avoid these crises. From beginning to end, no mutation occurred. At the critical moment of life and death, the ability to mutate was not stimulated. It seems that the magic of the heart magic crystal is too little. There were actually ways to replenish the magic. For example, eating demon beast meat and drinking demon beast blood. But although the blood of the brown monkey bear was processed by ZD and saved a few vials, they were all given to Zhenjin. But because of the sandstorm, these vials of demon beast blood were lost. Now in ZD's small leather bag, there was no similar potion. I'm afraid that in this case, I can't mutate anymore. Without the mutation, the young knight threw these scorpion tails by himself. The effect would be very poor. Without the enhancement of speed and throwing strength, there was no way to threaten the spear scorpions. Even this won't do? Sang-soo sighed, his face full of disappointment. Zhenjin handed the water bag to ZD. The girl gradually stopped sobbing and drank the water in small mouthfuls. With the help of eating, his emotions gradually stabilized. The cave fell into a dead silence. He was truly at the end of his rope. After a long time. "My lord, you should drink some water too." The girl in his arms handed the water bag to Zhenjin. Zhenjin took a sip, moistening his throat that was as dry as a desert. The air in the cave was no longer as pungent as before. People's ability to adapt sometimes exceeded their expectations. Moreover, under such circumstances, even if he couldn't adapt, what could he do? "My lord, please leave." ZD tried to persuade him again in a low voice. Zhenjin made up his mind. He nodded and replied, "I'll leave. I'll leave at dawn. After I rush out, I'll try my best to attract the spear scorpions. You guys take the opportunity to leave this place and split up." Although he wanted to protect ZD, Zhenjin knew that among the three of them, he was the only one who could bear the heavy responsibility of attracting the scorpions. This was their last chance. They chose to escape during the day because the ground here was uneven. There were many deep pits and magma trap. During the day, before the magma spurted out, there would be grayish-white smoke first. But at night, the smoke was difficult to be seen by the human eye. This was very dangerous. Okay. ZD's heart trembled. She agreed with Zhenjin's escape plan. Sang-soo also nodded and didn't say anything. Everyone knew that this escape plan was very simple and the hope of escaping alive was very slim. But what else could they do? This was simply sending themselves to their death. But what else could they do? This was their last resort. ZD fell asleep in Zhenjin's arms. She drank some water, and her stomach rumbled with hunger. However, ZD didn't notice and slept soundly. This was the most peaceful sleep she had had since she fell into the desert. Perhaps it was also the last sleep of her life. Zhenjin didn't sleep. He looked at the girl curled up in his arms, and the love in his heart grew stronger. He felt that the latter was like a skinny kitten that had been wandering for a long time. Baya was still unconscious. Most of the exploration team members had died in battle, but he was still alive. But if he didn't wake up, he would definitely be buried here. Time passed slowly. Midnight passed. Around 3 or 4 o'clock, Sang-Soo slowly opened his eyes. The old scholar let out a deep sigh. "Sir, you're too hungry." Jinjin was taking a nap. At this moment, he opened his eyes slightly. This was indeed the case. The stronger the Qi cultivator, the more nutrients he needed to absorb. The Grand Duke of Steel Armor in the north of the Empire had to eat 3 meals of subdragon meat a day. The Prince of Fire Phoenix of the Elven Empire had to eat 2 kilograms of white frost spirit deer antler a day. Jinjin was now sitting against the wall of the cave, not even daring to move. He was afraid of wasting his strength needlessly. Even a little more strength would be precious in the fierce battle tomorrow morning, so he had to save as much as possible. "Lord Jinjin, you need food very much now." Sang-Soo's voice sounded, his tone heavier than before. Jinjin opened his eyes completely and saw the grief and coldness in Sang-Soo's gray eyes. Jinjin snorted coldly. He knew what Sang-Soo meant. The food that the latter was alluding to was Baya. However, asking a paladin to eat people? This was simply a fantasy. An extremely ugly suggestion. "Sir, you're too hungry. How can you fight without strength? Baya's meat is our only food. His blood can also replace water." "Shut up," Jinjin scolded in a low voice, his eyes full of anger. "I will never slaughter the innocent for my own sake. If you were Baya, would you want to be treated as food?" Sang-Soo was silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled. His smile was full of bitterness, but also seemed to be relieved. Sang-Soo raised his head and took a deep breath, then said something shocking, "Then please eat me first." Jinjin was stunned. Seeing the doubt on Jinjin's face, Sang-Soo said with a smile, "Lord Jinjin might have some misunderstandings about me. I don't fear death. After living to my age, what can't I see through? I'm just afraid that my pursuits and dreams won't be realized. Therefore, I know how to cherish my life far more than those young people, because I know that I don't have much time left. My time is very precious. However, if fate bestows an end upon me, what can I do? I've already resisted with all my strength, using my life to argue. The process of my struggle may be laughable, pitiful, and lamentable, but I don't regret it. Lord Jinjin." Sang-Soo looked deeply at Jinjin and said very seriously, "Although we haven't been together for long, I know very well that you are a noble character, a true temple knight. You are brave, strong, and brave. No matter how strong the enemy is, they will not be able to defeat the flag in your heart. Although you have extraordinary strength and talent, you have always remained humble, and are full of thirst for knowledge. Although you are young, your adaptability is extraordinary. Your growth in this period of time is amazing. You are of noble birth, but you still maintain an equal attitude to those of lower status. This is especially valuable. Sir, for tomorrow morning's breakout, Miss ZD and I have no hope. The scorpions won't let us go. Any ordinary spear scorpion can easily take our lives. The one most likely to survive is you, sir. However, sir, in your current state, can you escape?" Sang-Soo shook his head. "You don't even have confidence in yourself. And before that, any food can increase your chances of survival, my lord. If we put aside morality and emotions, eating Baya is the wisest decision. Sir, you won't deny this, right?" Jinjin did not speak. Sang-Soo continued, "I once read the ogre's notes. According to the standard of food, the young Baya's meat is more tender and nutritious than mine. However, I can be considered qualified to serve as food. The most important thing is that I am different from Baya. I am willing to sacrifice myself. Therefore, sir, you are not a demon that slaughters the innocent, but a savior. What's different is that you're not saving the life of a weakling, but the insignificant wish of a weakling on his deathbed. Before I die, I have a small request, and I hope you can agree to it. Sang-soo had a very deep understanding of his situation. He was too old, and breaking out tomorrow morning would almost certainly lead to death. In addition, he had a request, so he sacrificed himself, wanting to use saving to achieve his last wish. Jinjin sighed and shook his head. I will not eat anyone, whether it is you or Baya. Because I am a knight, a temple knight. Fate favored the strong, but it never pitted those who accepted their fate. Sang-soo, if you think you are going to die, then you are really going to die. However, if you have any last wishes, you can say them. I promise you that I will do my best to help you achieve them without violating my principles. Chapter 63. Sang-soo nodded slightly. He was silent for a while, as if he was considering his words. Then, he said in a desolate tone, My name is Sang-soo. I was born in a farmer's family. I was originally the son of a farmer. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I started working. My main job was to clean horse dung. Our family had a short-legged old horse. We mainly used it to pull plows. Once, when I was cleaning horse dung, the old horse suddenly got angry and kicked me with its back hooves. I fell head first into the dung and almost suffocated to death. Although I was lucky to be saved, being so close to death filled my young heart with fear. I couldn't let go of it for a long time. I became very timid. I was afraid of any kind of horse, even things that were similar in shape. I didn't even dare to go near the stable. My parents arranged other work for me to do. I was also timid. If there was any trouble, I would hide. Naturally, I was laughed at by my playmates and alienated by my parents. No one in the village was optimistic about my future. After a long time, I realized that my fear might not be fear of horses, but fear of life as a farmer. Shame made me lonely. Loneliness made me think. The gift of fate is bitter first and sweet later. It made me afraid that I would live as a farmer for the rest of my life. Luck came. When I was 8 years old, I saw the dawn of fate. A priest from the horse god church came to our village and wanted to build a church. There was no church in the village. Everyone in the village hoped that there would be a priest to treat them when they were sick. Therefore, the villagers spontaneously organized and built a church for the horse god for free. Among all the volunteers, I was the one who worked the hardest. I tried my best to please the priest. I tried my best to show my faith in the horse god to win the priest's favor. The priest wanted children of my age very much. After a day of work, he would gather a dozen children, including me, and teach us arithmetic, writing, and other knowledge. Spring passed and autumn came. After the church was built, the priest announced a piece of news. He wanted to choose a few volunteers to become his colleagues. He even wanted to recruit 2 of the children and train them to become trainee priests. No one was an idiot. The villagers scrambled for this. The status of clergy was much higher than that of farmers. And families with children of the right age are even crazier. I really want to become a trainee priest. I know that this may be the only chance in my life to change my fate. For this, I can even sacrifice my life. The competition is very fierce. I relied on my hard work and previous hard work to stay until the final selection. There were 4 people in total, but only 2 trainee priests were recruited. The other 3 people were all rich people in the village. One of them was even the village chief. In order to increase their hope, they used their power and wealth to oppress my family, forcing my parents to admit defeat. My family has been ostracized to the point that it's almost impossible to survive. Every day has become a torture. My parents tried to persuade me, but of course I refused. I almost broke with them. I went to participate in the final test with a do-or-die attitude. But I failed. The shadow of my youth still hangs over my heart, and I am afraid of horses. Towards the horse god, I only have fear, not respect. I can't believe in him, even if I try my best. The priests of the horse god are wise and far-sighted, but they are also ruthless. Even though I knelt on the ground and begged him, he still eliminated me. I was very disappointed and felt that my whole life was bleak. That evening, I walked down the street in a daze, surrounded by villagers who ridiculed me. I don't know how I got home, but I couldn't eat anything. For a period of time after that, my father beat and scolded me. My mother reprimanded me for having excessive thoughts. Although my family is free, because my father had a serious illness, our family conditions were very poor. We were forced to farm other people's farmland and pay the rent. This is actually no different from being a serf. However, because of what happened to me, none of the villagers rented extra land to us. In order to punish me, my parents gave me a heavy amount of labor. Every day, with a body that was almost falling apart, I slept on a haystack. The punishment and failure didn't make me admit defeat. The ridicule and ostracism didn't make me despair. I became more and more unwilling, and this unwillingness gradually turned into a kind of resentment. Although I was depressed for many days, I soon cheered up. The biggest way I worked hard was to review the knowledge I learned from the priest. I only had time to spare at night. During the day, I had to get up very early. If I couldn't finish the work my parents gave me, I wouldn't even have a piece of black bread. Although every day was very tiring, I never gave up on studying at night. I memorized the things the priest taught me and deeply engraved them in my heart. Until now, I still remember every piece of knowledge in it very clearly. I cherish them, love them, and cherish them like the hope of my life. They are my resistance to my fate. One night, priest horse god quietly came to the haystack and woke me up from my sleep. I was surprised and happy, thinking, could there be a turn for the better? I immediately knelt on the ground and swore to the priest that I would do my best to believe in horse god and eliminate all the fear in my heart. But priest horse god shook his head and said, "Horse god doesn't force belief." The reason he found me was because he found out about my life and had been secretly observing it for a while. I worked hard and was full of desire for knowledge, which moved him. Priest horse god gave me a new choice. If I became his slave, he would teach me the knowledge I wanted. As for the future, it would all depend on my own efforts. I convinced my parents to sell me. Of course, the main reason was that priest horse god spent a lot of money to buy me. The priest didn't deceive me, and even treated me much better than I thought. He even kept the deal a secret and let me be a servant in the church. I served the priest's daily life with all my heart, and he taught me valuable knowledge. I learned more about arithmetic, literature, astronomy, and geography. Of all the gains, I think the most precious was priest horse god's curiosity for knowledge and his attitude of diligently seeking knowledge. This attitude influenced my life. At this point, Sang-Soo paused for a moment. The long narration made him a little breathless. Sang-Soo continued, "The competition for belief is sometimes more intense than war. Horse god originated from the wilderness continent and was the god of the beast. In the Shengming continent, his influence was too small. Therefore, when the life sect spread, horse god's belief was immediately shaken and quickly collapsed, without any strength to compete. Priest horse god was forced to leave. Before he left, he released me from my slave status and declared me free. Moreover, he advised me to continue my studies. I went to Silver Bridge Academy and participated in the examination. Priest horse god's teachings gave me a solid academic foundation, so I passed the examination and became an extremely poor student in the academy. 3 years later, I graduated from the academy and became a scholar. I taught in Silver Bridge Academy for 3 years, then relied on the connections in the academy to become the steward of a small noble. Later, I transferred many nobles to take up small positions in the management of the territory. I wasn't a noble, nor was I a servant raised by a noble. More importantly, I didn't have the talent to cultivate. For these reasons, I was repeatedly looked down upon and excluded, and my position was never high. After 5 years, an opportunity appeared in front of me. There was a riot in a village, and the official who went to collect taxes was killed. The steward in charge of collecting taxes deceived his superiors and was afraid of being discovered by the Lord, so he offered a large reward for the person who could successfully collect taxes. I was familiar with the villagers in that village, so I thought this was an opportunity and volunteered. I was hung up and beaten, locked in a cell, and tortured continuously. Just as they were about to kill me, they asked me if I had any last word. I laughed out loud, but I just shook my head and didn't say anything. This confused the villagers. I told them that I was their friend, and that I had never been hostile. I was here to save them. If they were obedient and paid the taxes, then the steward would pretend that nothing had happened. If they were unwilling, then the knights would come to destroy them. The villagers were afraid, knowing that the entire village couldn't resist the knights. However, if they paid the taxes, their food reserves would be depleted, and they would starve to death. I pretended to tell them that the steward had secretly lowered the taxes. If they paid the taxes, the villagers would still have food reserves and could still survive. However, as a condition, the villagers had to keep it a secret, or other villages would follow suit. After the villagers discussed it, they agreed. I secretly made up for the missing taxes and then reported back. Just like that, I gained the steward's favor and was finally promoted. I was in a high position, and at first, no one thought highly of me. They think that I'm just a simple scholar who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, and that an assassination would be enough to end my life. But in reality, I had been in this position for more than 30 years. The position I'm in gives me a chance to perform. My knowledge allowed me to show my value, and the Lord gradually had a deep impression of me. During this process, I never gave up my pursuit of knowledge. It was because I kept gaining new knowledge that my value grew. Although Pastor Horse left me a long time ago, his spirit of pursuing knowledge has already merged with my blood. I thought that I would serve the Lord until I died, but fate arranged a new path for me. As time passed, I became older and older, and this made many people see an opportunity. At the same time, I pursued knowledge more than power, and tried my best to avoid the internal strife of the Lord, which made those in power unhappy. They instigated a young man. His name was Lantu, and he daydreamed of becoming a knight all day long. He was my most trusted deputy. The Lord's third lady tempted him with love, and finally made the young man decide to betray. He reported me, claiming that I was a dangerous criminal who had been hiding for many years, and that I had always had ulterior motives towards the Lord's family and the Lord's family. In order to save my life, I could only escape. The young man smoothly took over my position and was recruited by the third lady. The act of fleeing to avoid punishment undoubtedly confirmed the young man's accusation. At the beginning of the escape, I was very sad, angry, and indulged in all kinds of negative emotions, unable to extricate myself. After a long time, I finally figured it out. It was fate that gave me a new path. I asked myself, I'm already so old, and I don't have much time left. How should I spend the rest of my life? In the end, I decided to pursue what I really wanted, and that was knowledge. Of all the knowledge, I was most interested in biology. I wanted to achieve something in academia, and I wanted to complete a work, and do my best to explain the mysteries of life. Soon, there was a warrant for my arrest. I was not surprised. I served the Lord's family, held an important position, and knew a lot of secrets. The Lord's family would not let me go so easily. I could not continue to stay in the Xingming continent, so I could only take a ship to the Beast continent. It just so happened that the wilderness continent had many unique ecosystems, which would be of great help to my academic work. Lord Jinjin, I am an old man with a warrant for his arrest. If you want to recruit me, you will undoubtedly become the enemy of the Mianxia family. This was the reason why I rejected your offer. And the reason why I mastered the method to tame the violent horse. Most of it came from the horse god's priest. The remaining part of the technique was completed by me after 30 years of experimentation. That's my story. Very interesting. Zhen Jin praised. Sang Su smiled slightly. Thank you for your praise, sir. It is my honor to have you listen to me. Half of my academic work has been completed, and it is hidden in my brain, but at the same time, I have also secretly hidden a copy in the Mianxia territory. This half of the work is hidden in a prison cell in the ruins of a village. That is the place where I was tortured. It is in the bricks under the iron shackles. My last wish is that if I die here, then please give the half of my work to Lon Tuesday. Of course, sir, you can read it and take it. If it can be used by you, then it is my great honor. Zhen Jin frowned and could not help but feel puzzled. Lon Tu? ZD woke up at some point. If I did not hear wrongly, Lon Tu is the young man who framed you. Yes, Miss ZD, you did not hear wrongly. Sang Su's face showed a complicated expression, bleak, sad, with a trace of pain and hope. He continued, because this young man is my son. Chapter 64. There was a moment of silence in the cave. Being betrayed by his own son was a huge blow to Sang Su as a father. However, when Sang Su was facing death, he still thought of his son. Sang Su hoped that his writings would be of help to his son. Of course, at the same time, he also hoped that his writings could be passed down. There was hatred, love, and a lot of helplessness and vicissitude. Very complicated emotions. Zhen Jin and ZD finally began to understand the old scholar in front of them. No wonder he cherished his life so much before, and no wonder he was willing to sacrifice himself now. If I manage to escape, I will help you fulfill your last wish, ZD promised solemnly. Thank you, Miss ZD. Sang Su thanked sincerely. Then, Lord Zhen Jin. Sang Su looked at Zhen Jin again. Although Zhen Jin did not say anything and only shook his head slightly, his attitude was very firm. In the stalemate, ZD took out a few letters. In fact, I think that Baya also told us his last wish. Zhen Jin recognized it with a glance. These letters were found on Baya's body. Baya once seemed to struggle out of his unconscious state for a short while. He pointed to his chest and gestured to us letters. Sang Su and I have read the contents of the letters. Sir, you should also take a look. ZD handed the letters to Zhen Jin. Zhen Jin took them and browsed through them curiously. These letters were all love letters. The male lead was Baya, and the female lead was called Shiyu. Some of the letters were written by Shiyu to Baya, and Baya kept them with him. Some of the letters were written by Baya to Shihua. They recorded the experiences and thoughts of Baya after he boarded the ship and had yet to be sent out. Shiyu was a noble lady while Baya was the son of a hunter. Shifu's family had a summer villa in the mountain village, and hunting was a traditional entertainment for the nobles. Baya was selected as a guide. Because of this, the two of them interacted. Although there was a huge disparity between their statuses, they fell in love with each other. This kind of situation was very rare. It was like a story told by bards. Baya was overwhelmed by this love and felt as if he was in a dream. He treated Shiyu as his whole life. He wrote many times in his letters, but because of the person he loved, he gave up his life. However, there was a huge gap between their identities. In order to make their love come to fruition, Baya wanted to become a knight. It was very difficult for a commoner to become a knight. To be precise, it was extremely difficult. Becoming a knight from a commoner was something that had happened several hundred years ago. Even when the Xingming Emperor unified the human continent and completely subdued the noble alliance in the south, there were only a few newly promoted nobles. For Bai Ye, his only hope lay in the overseas battlefield. Under the Xingming Emperor's orders, the human ships set out for the wilderness continent and began an invasion of the beast race. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Although it was very dangerous, for a commoner, fighting the beast race on the battlefield gave him a chance to become a knight. This was the reason why Bai Ye took the ship to Baisha City. Zhenjin sighed. If I am lucky enough to survive, I will give these letters to Miss Shiyu. Moreover, I swear on my honor as a knight that I will tell her that her beloved Bai Ye is a very brave man. He is skilled in archery and once helped me. He is benevolent and did not hesitate to take heavy injuries to save his companions. He is brave and unyielding. Even at the last moment of his life, he did not cower. Although he is not a knight, I am sure that he possesses many of the virtues of a knight. In truth, Zhenjin did not want to be a messenger of pain. When he said this, he could already imagine Miss Shiyu's heartbroken and pitiful appearance. However, Sang-Su shook his head. The old scholar revealed a hint of ridicule. As far as I know, the reality might not be like this, Lord Zhenjin. In recent years, there has been a trend among the female nobles of the empire. The source of this trend is Duchess Amy. This duchess pursues love and beauty. She has always loudly proclaimed that she wants to increase the power and status of women in the empire. She is very powerful and is one of the living gods. Her life is extravagant and indulgent, and she is best at lying. She is famous for playing with men. With Duchess Amy as her role model, the female nobles scrambled to imitate her. They tempt men with love, teasing them, making them kneel before their skirts, or watching them fight to the death for themselves, or manipulating them to become puppets. Zhenjin frowned and pinched the letter. So you think that Bai Ye and Shiyu are in the same situation? Sang-Su nodded. I am not guessing out of thin air. There is evidence in the letter. First, the love came too suddenly. The time they spent together was too short, and there was no incident of a hero saving a damsel in distress. Second, Shiyu took the initiative to encourage Bai Ye to become a knight. Therefore, this was not Bai Ye's original intention. Third, Shiyu took the initiative to ask Bai Ye to write to her. From Shiyu's point of view, making fun of Bai Ye, changing the fate of a hunter's son, and manipulating him into becoming a knight is a very interesting thing. If she succeeds, she will gain a knight who will serve her with unparalleled loyalty. She will pay very little in return. If she fails, then from Bai Ye's letter, she will be able to greatly reduce her boredom in the boudoir. Even if Bai Ye is sacrificed in the end, it will become something for Shiyu to brag about. You see, someone died for me, a fool who wants to become a knight. Fourth, the reason why I am so sure and even certain is because my son is the victim. It is very likely that even now, he is still dreaming of marrying the third miss of the Sand Tower family. Perhaps this is my fault. I passed on my mediocre bloodline to him, but did not give him the talent to cultivate. This pitiful and sad little guy, he is exactly like me when I was young, not satisfied with the status quo and wants to break free from his current life. The love of the third miss gave him a bright future. However, he does not know that his father once paid a great price and spent a long time in order to break free from his original life, surpassing his lowly status. Young people always think that they are favored by fate. When good luck comes, even if it is hard to believe at first, they believe that they have been treated well and should be treated well. Any good thing, any success that happens to them is a matter of course, a matter of course. Only when they have been beaten and tortured, through wind and rain and thunder, will they gradually understand that they are ordinary, how precious the kindness of others is, and how they should cherish it. The reason why beautiful love stories are so widely spread is because they are too rare in reality. Do not look at the records in the history books. Those heroes seem to have been blessed by the heavens, born to rule a country or achieve great things. Even if they encounter a disaster, they will always turn the danger into safety. When faced with a difficult choice, they will always choose morality and glory. That is because they are all victors. When they defeat all their enemies after victory, what the history books will write will be decided by them. They magnify the virtues on their bodies, or even fabricate them out of thin air, like holding a dazzling torch high for the world to look up to. Noble character, outstanding talent, destined by the heavens, and so on, it is convenient for them to rule, or to protect their great cause, or to reap external benefits. And their vulgarity, desire, filth, and insidiousness are all hidden in the shadow of the torch. When people see the torch, their eyes are immediately attracted by the brilliant flames, and they will not look down at the shadow cast by the ground. Sir, even if you eat me, no one will know. Baya is unconscious and unconscious. Miss ZD is your fiancée, and her interests are linked, and she will never betray you. And you can only escape with enough food. You are the victor, and your experience is recounted by you, and no one can refute it. What happened here, outsiders will not know. And I am also truly willing, I believe that you will do your best to fulfill my last wish. Zhen Jin shook his head slightly. You overestimate me, I am not a victor, I am just a knight. The young knight smiled bitterly. To tell you the truth, ZD brought people to search for me, and I woke up alive. However, I have lost most of my memories. I only remember my name and my identity. Sometimes, 1 or 2 pieces of memory will suddenly come back, reminding me or letting me master a certain skill. Sang Su was suddenly stunned. After reacting, the old scholar continued to persuade. Sir, if you remember that you are a knight, then you should eat more food. Your physical fitness is too poor. How long can you fight tomorrow? Maybe you will be unable to avoid the fatal blow of the scorpion tail. You need food now. A lot of food. Think about your identity, your family. As the defeated party, although the 100 Needles family has entered the Xingming Emperor's camp, their situation is not very good, right? You are the only heir of the family, and the whole territory needs your leadership and revitalization in the future. In addition to your innate responsibility, you also need to protect your fiancé's life. Eat food and you will have physical fitness. Not only will your chances of survival increase, but you will also protect your fiancée. Perhaps it was because you ate an extra piece of meat that she was lucky enough to survive the breakout tomorrow morning. Are you forcing me? Zhenjin was furious. Sang Su smiled. Yes, I am forcing you. But please forgive me, Lord Zhenjin. I am going to die, and a dead man does not fear worldly authority. I want to fulfill my last wish, and for this, my life is just a bargaining chip. Zhenjin unconsciously clenched his fist. He glared at Sang Su, very angry. He was angry at Sang Su for bullying him. He was angry at himself for falling into such a situation. This was fate's abuse. He hated himself for being weak, for being forced into a desperate situation by the scorpion swarm, unable to bear the responsibility, and unable to protect his fiancée's life. But what made him most angry was that he found himself wavering. Zhenjin knew that Sang Su was a wise man. He also knew that Sang Su's words were very reasonable. Purely according to reason, he should follow Sang Su's advice. Then, what about his morals? What about his conscience? Where did it place him? Then, what if he ate people as food? He would no longer be a human, a criminal, and drag out an ignoble existence. Glory and reputation would never be linked to him. However, thinking like this, was he too selfish? Only caring about his own reputation and virtue, but disregarding other people's lives? Eating food, could he sacrifice a person to save himself and others? Maybe not, But Zhenjin was clear that doing this would indeed increase everyone's chances of survival. If he were to be stubborn, would it be a kind of foolishness? Just like what Song Su had said, history was written by the victors. If he did not eat people, perhaps he would really die under the silver spear scorpion. Then what would his father think? Would the ancestors of the past scold him for not being flexible? If he ate people, would he regret it in the future? If he did not eat people, he would live, but everyone else would die. In the future, there was a chance in front of him, but he chose to give it up. Maybe it was possible to save his fiancée and others, but he did not do so. Zhenjin struggled in his heart. All kinds of thoughts came one after another, lingering in his mind. Hesitation, doubt, confusion, and all kinds of emotions made his thoughts gradually become chaotic. Zhenjin was not the only one who suffered this night. The cold wind of the night was like a knife blowing. Huang Zhao braved the wind, carrying Lan Zhao on his back, and moved forward with difficulty. He felt like a broken scarecrow that could be blown away by the wind at any time. It was pitch black in front of him, he could not see, he could not touch, just like Huang Zhao's heart at this time. The reason why he kept moving forward was more due to numbness or inertia. His heart was cold, and despair gradually enveloped him. The only warmth was from Lan Zhao on his back. Lan Zhao's body temperature was getting higher and higher, and his wounds were festering. He was about to die. "Don't die, brother, don't die. I paid such a big price to carry you so far. If you die, it would be too unfair to me. I wanted to get off the boat long ago, you know. But you want to live on the sea. If I was on land, why would I be reduced to this damned island? So, it's all your fault, all of this is your fault." Huang Zhao shouted in his heart. With the help of these calls, he encouraged himself. However, compared to the encouragement of his spirit, the feeling of hunger and thirst stimulated his body and mind. Chapter 65. Xian Zhao was too thirsty. His throat felt like it was stuffed with a sun, his entire throat and the base of his tongue were half-cooked, he couldn't speak at all. Xian Zhao was too hungry. He was so hungry that his stomach was sticking to his spine, his body was weak, he staggered as he walked, his head was dizzy, he was even hallucinating. In the hallucination, he felt like he was walking on clouds. But there was a mountain on his body. The mountain was too heavy, it wanted to flatten him into paper. Soon, the mountain changed its appearance, it turned into a devil with goat horns. The devil opened its bloody mouth and shouted in his ears, "Eat! Eat you! Eat you!" Xian Zhao was terrified. He wanted to throw the mountain or the devil off his back. But his arms and hands didn't listen to him, they were completely numb. He just let himself carry the mountain or the devil. Then, very quickly, the devil on his back changed again. The devil turned into a suckling pig. This suckling pig gave off a strong stench of sweat, as well as the smell of rotting wounds. Xian Zhao lowered his head and saw that there was a flame burning in his stomach. It was a raging fire. It burned very fiercely and quickly spread. In almost an instant, the huge flame almost covered Xian Zhao's entire body. Then, the flame spread to the suckling pig on his back, turning him into a roasted suckling pig. The aroma of food seemed to reach his nose at this moment. No, definitely not. As if he smelled this aroma, Xian Zhao's body trembled, as if he was electrocuted. He miraculously broke free from the hallucination. He returned to reality. In front of him was a dark night. He couldn't even see his own fingers. The endless night wind blew past his ears, whistling coldly without end. On his back was his brother, who was unconscious. He was walking forward, his steps staggering, he was like a puppet. It was extremely small and lonely. Xian Zhao didn't notice that he was crying. He looked forward, as if there was light in front of him, as if there was a wide and flat road in front of him. He said to himself in his heart, "The night is almost over, dawn is about to come, hold on, Xian Zhao, there should be an oasis in front of us. That oasis is where you and the other team members arrived before, look at the terrain, doesn't it look like it? You're almost there. You're almost there. Hold on, don't let up. There must be an oasis. There must be. When you reach the oasis, you will have water and prey. You can hunt, you're a black iron ranker. You won't die, you won't die. Your brother won't die either. He will be saved by you." Huang Zhao was firm in her beliefs, but Zhen Jin felt himself wavering. Hunger was gnawing at him. Every cell in his body was calling for food. Food. I don't care what I eat, just give me some food. Sang Su is right. No one will know what happened here. If ZD survives, she will be even more grateful to me. If it really doesn't work, then I can only give up on her. As long as I live, I can continue to shoulder the heavy burden of revitalizing the family. As soon as this thought came to his mind, Jin Jin shuddered, even though the cave was very hot. Immediately, a strong sense of shame made Jin Jin's face burn. He felt how ugly he was. Could it be that he was so afraid of death? Another thought surfaced in his mind. If I eat this food, my physical strength will increase tremendously. With enough stamina, I will definitely be able to face this challenge more calmly. I don't eat meat for myself. I want to kill the silver spear scorpion. I want to defeat the entire group of scorpions. That way, no one will die. I won't die, ZD won't die, Sang Su won't die. I'm doing this for them. This thought was even more tempting than the previous thought. Then, another thought appeared and disappeared. Then, a new thought appeared. Zhen Jin knew that he was wavering. The cave wall he was leaning on was unable to give him a strong perseverance. Although Sang Su and ZD remained silent and Baiyu remained motionless, their existence seemed to be oppressing this poor youth. I am a Templar Knight. Can a Templar Knight do such a thing? Needlepoint asked himself. He began to reflect on himself. Things have fallen to this point. Is it because my leader made a mistake? Did I do a lot of things wrong? Opening up a battlefield here to deal with the scorpions, am I overestimating my abilities? If I had known this would happen, would I have chosen another path? Zhen Jin began to doubt himself, and this doubt increased his hesitation. Zhen Jin was hesitant. If I eat them as food in the future, when I recall the past, will I be tormented by guilt? Or will I not have a trace of regret? If I don't eat, how can I fulfill my responsibilities? Do I have to watch my fiancée die? In order to save me, she did not hesitate to put herself in danger. How many times has she been in imminent peril? And my father is looking forward to me bringing new hope to the family. I am the only heir of the 100 Needles family. What about me? I was once bullied and silently accumulated, just to rise up and show my opponents. Will my past self look down on me for making such a choice? At this moment, a memory surfaced in his mind. A room that was clearly meticulously decorated, luxurious and extravagant. The walls were hung with famous paintings, and the air was filled with the smell of expensive perfume. The pink and gold curtains were drawn, blocking most of the daytime sunlight, making the whole room seem dim and ambiguous. A dancer was wearing a foreign costume from the empire's northwest. Her face was covered with a purple veil, making her stunning face even more mysterious and seductive. Her figure was slim and enchanting, with a curvy front and back. The red dance dress mixed with gold thread was very short and tight, revealing her slender arms and snow-white navel. As soon as the dance music ended, she stepped on the thick carpet and slowly climbed up, following the rhythm of the dance until she reached her waist. Her hands were clasped together, no longer moving. At this time, the tip of her shoe was turned over, revealing half of her foot. Under the candlelight, it revealed a sparkling and translucent luster, making people's hearts throb and want to take a bite. Her face was dignified, her beautiful eyes were like amber, and her fixed movements revealed her beautiful figure as a woman. The three youths in the room were stunned. After a while, the youths came back to their senses and applauded. Only then did the dancer slowly put down her feet, standing on the spot with her legs slightly bowed. This is the dancer GC, whose name has recently shaken the capital. She truly lives up to her reputation. One of the youngsters praised sincerely. Zhenjin was one of the three youths. His main attention was on the other youth. This youth's identity was not ordinary. Zhenjin asked with a smile, "Dark Gu, didn't you ask me to see GC's dance? What do you think? I can now make the decision to give this Miss GC to you. Tonight you can use her to warm your bed." Ah. What? The youth who just spoke was shocked, looking at Dark Gu with eyes full of envy. Dark Ji's appearance was different from Zhenjin's. Although the two of them were very handsome, Zhenjin had a head full of blonde hair and dark blue eyes, while Dark Gu had shoulder-length black hair and a pair of very special eyes. The normal sclera of the eyes was pitch black, but his white pupils were wrapped in the pitch-black sclera, showing a cold light. No matter when he was sitting, his body was always straight. But at this moment, Dark Gu stared at the dancer GC, unconsciously leaning his lower body. As long as he opened his mouth and said a word, this extremely alluring dancer would be in his bag. Temptation, an enormous temptation. Dark Ji's throat moved, swallowing a mouthful of saliva. He stared at GC, his gaze full of aggression and possessiveness. As if his gaze was too scorching, the dancer GC shyly lowered her head, revealing even more of her snow-white neck. This kind of attitude made Dark Ji's lower abdomen feel even more hot. Seeing Dark Ji's expression, Zhenjin revealed a complacent smile. Dark Gu usually maintained a strict discipline, being the most honorable person in the 5th Temple Knight Regiment, and also the one who trained the hardest. But as long as one was a normal man, they couldn't avoid it. Even those who usually suppress themselves, once they release their desires, would become even more frightening. However, contrary to Zhenjin's expectations, as time passed, this Dark Ji's expression became more and more sinister, and then gradually calmed down, returning to his usual calm appearance. "Dark Gu, you?" The other youth also noticed the change in Dark Ji's expression, bewildered. Dark Gu smiled, calmly reaching out his hand, wiping off the cold sweat on his forehead. Fierce, the temptation of beauty is really fierce. He seemed to have a lingering fear, however, this beauty is already of no value to me. I won't take her. Zhenjin was puzzled. What do you mean? Dark Gu said, Zhenjin, thank you for helping me. To tell you the truth, cultivation isn't just about cultivating the body, but also the mind. Do you know the teachings of my dark clan? Zhenjin nodded. The teachings of great nobles had always been widely spread. Dark Gu continued, my clan's bloodline originates from the Abyss demons. Although this bloodline is high-end and gives the clansman powerful cultivation aptitude, it is also very dangerous. Often, there are clansmen who are addicted to their desires, unable to extricate themselves, causing them to lose their rationality and become chaotic lunatic. Therefore, my clan's teachings are this: hell is at your feet, depravity is imminent. The teachings remind us to remain vigilant, desire is an abyss, if we don't pay attention, we will turn into a demon, no longer human. The youth on the side suddenly realized, so, this is actually your cultivation? Dark Gu nodded, looking at Zhenjin. Zhenjin, you and I are colleagues. Since you've helped me this time, I'll try my best to persuade you. Your own cultivation is the most important. Blindly currying favor with others will only be a leaf fluttering in the wind. After saying this, Dark Gu ignored Zhenjin's ugly expression, got up and left. The memory faded, and Zhenjin suddenly woke up. Unknowingly, he was covered in a cold sweat. Every part of his body conveyed a feeling of weakness. Another memory recovered, but it didn't bring him any obvious improvement. However, that sentence was very profound. Hell is at your feet, depravity is imminent. Zhenjin couldn't help but murmur. Looking back at this new memory, Zhenjin began to analyze. The Dark Hui clan is a great noble clan of the empire. Duke Dark Hui is a living god, and also the right hand of the Qingming emperor. As the son of Duke Dark Hui, Dark Ji's position is very stable, so of course he doesn't need to curry favor with others. However, my Hundred Needles clan needs to stand firm, so making friends with Dark Go is a wise move. GC is indeed a charming and seductive woman. Then, I can control her freedom and let GC's fame spread throughout the capital. This proves that the Hundred Needles clan has a certain amount of resources and power in the capital. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse, worthy of being an old noble clan of the south. On the other hand, you can see how successful my forbearance is. Dark Go also misunderstood me, thinking that I am a person who seeks personal gain. I am a bit curious. How is my relationship with Dark Go after this? Did I make any progress in making friends with him? Feeling that the thoughts in his mind were overflowing, Zhenjin shook his head slightly and stopped guessing. Now is not the time to think about this. Although the memory recovered couldn't increase Zhenjin's fighting strength, it unexpectedly solved his problem. Hell is at your feet, depravity is imminent. Did I almost fall into depravity? That was close. I almost covered my knight's armor with dust that can't be erased. I am a brave, noble, and resolute holy knight. Even if there is the pressure of death, the threat of responsibility, I should scrupulously abide by the path of a knight. Zhenjin exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, as if he had removed 1,000 pounds of weight from his body. He slowly stood up. This action immediately attracted the attention of ZD and Sang Su. Seeing Zhenjin's calm expression, both of them realized that Zhenjin had made a decision. Lord Zhenjin. Sang Su cast an expectant gaze. But Zhenjin shook his head slightly. I will not treat people as food. Sang Su opened his mouth slightly, revealing a look of deep disappointment. Zhenjin's eyes were clear, and he stopped him before he could persuade him. Don't persuade me anymore, I have already made a decision. He shifted his gaze to ZD with a trace of apology. ZD was considerate and shook her head slightly. Sir, you and I are one, any decision you make is my decision. Zhenjin smiled. Let's go. According to this time, when we walk out of the cave, we will see the light of dawn. Chapter 66. A glimmer of light began to appear on the horizon. The light was extremely weak, but it was clear in the darkness of the night. Then, as if it were accompanied by the beating of a heart, the glimmer grew stronger and stronger. The darkness receded under the expansion of the light. The latter was like a giant that had just awakened, spreading its arms and stretching its limbs. Dawn. Dawn. The light shone on Huang Zhao's face, but it didn't bring him any warmth. Woo-woo! Huang Zhao burst into tears and fell to his knees in the desert. Lan Zhao on his back also fell to the ground. Oasis! Oasis! Huang Zhao screamed. His eyes were already cloudy and unclear. In his vision, there was only an empty desert. The oasis he encouraged himself to go to didn't appear. But I clearly heard the sound of water. I clearly heard it. Huang Zhao screamed, desperate to break his throat. There was the sound of water. Lan Zhao unexpectedly woke up. This was a sign of terminal lucidity. Yes, big brother, you heard it too, you heard it too. Huang Zhao was like a confused child who suddenly found his backbone and shouted wildly. However, Lan Zhao didn't respond to him. Instead, he whispered, I heard it. It was the sound of the sea. It was the sound of the waves. Huang Zhao was stunned. He suddenly realized that Lan Zhao had fallen into an illusion. In a trance, he swayed. The feeling of blue-green algae was wonderful. His hunger had completely left him. He felt as light as a feather, as if he was doing one of his favorite things. And that was diving. He liked to dive into the sea and then stay motionless, allowing the tide to carry him in any direction. Or he would slowly sink and look at the blue, boundless sky through the light of the water. It was such a pure blue, without a trace of impurities. The blue of the sky was originally cold and aloof, but under the light of the sea, the blue became gentle, elegant, sad, and approachable. Lon Zao liked this kind of blue the most. Immersed in this kind of blue, he could forget himself. In such a beautiful scene, did it matter who he was? It wasn't important anymore. Let's just keep going like this. Lon Zao sighed with satisfaction in his heart. Then, a huge shark quietly appeared. It had a snow-white belly, sharp fins that were as straight as blades, and rows of terrifyingly sharp teeth. Its eyes were also blue, refracting light like glass. The shark and the unconscious Lon Zao stared at each other. Looking at those eyes up close, Lon Zao felt a trace of fear from the depths of his heart. As if he had been electrocuted, he woke up with a start and remembered who he was. That's right, my name is Lon Zao. I was born in a fishing village by the sea. My favorite hobby is to swim in the sea. I almost didn't grow up. When Lon Zao was 10 years old, there was a famine in the fishing village. Of course, it wasn't just the fishing village. The entire territory didn't harvest much food. However, the owner of this territory continued to impose harsh taxes. The surplus food of the fisherman village was forcibly plundered. In a simple thatched hut, Lon Zao and his family sat at the dining table. In front of the others were large bowls, and at the bottom of the bowls was a small pinch of dark green paste like food. But in front of Lon Zao's bowl, there was no less than half a bowl. Lon Zao looked at the food in his bowl. It was more than he ever had before. At the same time, an unprecedented fear shrouded his entire body and mind. Eat a little more. Lon Zao's father's voice was gentle, like the undulating waves of the sea. Lon Zao raised his head, but he couldn't see his father's face clearly. The fishing village was barren, and no candles could be lit. In the dim room, most of his father's face was hidden in the darkness. Only his blue eyes could be seen, refracting the light from the glass. In the middle of the night, Lon Zao heard the sound of breathing in his ears. The sound was getting heavier and heavier. He opened his eyes and saw his father lying on the edge of his bed, staring at him. Their faces were almost touching. Lon Zao opened his mouth to shout, but in the next moment, his father stretched out his hands and grabbed Lon Zao's neck. Lon Zao struggled frantically. The sound of his struggling woke up his mother and brother, Huang Zao. Seeing that their father wanted to choke Lon Zao to death, they hurriedly ran to stop him. "Get out of here!" His father kicked his mother away. Huang Zao cowered in the corner of the Fong family, trembling in fear. "This is your son!" his mother screamed. Her voice was incomparably mournful, like the last cry of a bird before it was pinched to death. "I gave birth to him. I gave him his life. I'm just taking it away now." His father roared, "Don't struggle, eat. Only by eating me can you live, only then can our family live." No. His mother shook her head frantically. "His life wasn't given by you, it was given by the god, Mother Lin. When I had a difficult birth, it was Mother Lin's priest who saved me. That's the god that the elves believe in, the evil god of our human race. You still have the face to mention it?" his father roared. But in the next moment, Lon Zao grabbed his hardwood pillow and slammed it on his father's head. His father was caught off guard and fainted. "I'm going to beat you to death. I'm going to beat you to death." Lon Zao didn't let him go. He kept shouting as if he was possessed. He raised the pillow again and again, and then slammed it on his father's head again and again. There was more and more blood, and the room was filled with the smell of blood. His father didn't move at all. Don't hit him, he's already dead, dead. In the end, his mother hugged Lon Zao tightly in her arms. Only then did the cyanobacteria stop its mechanical beating action. Its sluggish expression disappeared. It sobered up and cried loudly. In the next few days, 7 people died in the fishing village, one after another. Most of them were old, weak, sick, and young. Lon Zao's father was the only exception. Cyanobacteria and his mother buried their father together. Hunger can torture people into beasts. Orphans and widows were the easiest to bully. The villagers, who were usually gentle and kind, became violent and rough. His mother was attacked and seriously injured. Sensing the danger, Cyanobacteria's mother secretly left the fishing village with the 2 brothers. Near the fishing village they lived on, there were many small deserted islands. The small deserted island became their new home, and also became his mother's grave. It's good that I'm dead, so you can live. His mother called Lon Zao to her side and whispered her last words into his ear. The great God is calling me. Mother's soul will ascend to Mother Lin's holy temple. Don't worry about me, take good care of your brother. Cyanobacteria wept and put his mother on the boat. There was firewood and flowers on the boat. Other than that, the most exquisite burial object was a statue. The statue was in the image of Mother Lin. She looked like a doe, but with branch-like antlers, which were bigger than the antlers of a male deer. Vines were wrapped around the deer's legs, and flowers bloomed on the deer's body, forming deer-skin stripes. Lon Zao and Huang Zao pushed the boat to the sea, and then used a torch to light the dry wood on the boat. They watched the burning boat drift with the waves, reflecting an orange color on the surface of the sea. The continuous sound of the waves seemed to be repeating his mother's last words. Take good care of your brother. Take good care of your brother. Take good care of your brother. This last wish was deeply engraved in Lon Zao's heart. Until now, it still lingered in his ears. Cyanobacteria struggled to open her eyes. All he saw was a sea of confused whiteness. Huang Zao, my brother, where are you? He called out. He was very surprised that he actually had the strength to call out. It's fake, it's fake. There's no oasis, there's no oasis. Brother, there's no oasis, sob sob sob. Huang Zao lay beside Lon Zao, crying bitterly. He had already broken down. Lon Zao suddenly stretched out his arm and pulled Huang Zao's head over. He put his mouth next to Huang Zao's ear, just like how he used to do for his mother. Lon Zao told him his last words, Huang Zao, eat me, and you can continue to walk. Live well and take care of yourself. Huang Zao's body shook violently, as if he had been hit by a petrifying ray, and turned into a stone statue. After about 2 or 3 seconds, Huang Zao suddenly moved and pounced on Lon Zao, his hands strangling Lon Zao's neck. Brother, brother! He shouted. I'm sorry, he cried. I'll eat you, I'll eat you. His eyes were red like a beast. Lon Zao felt very uncomfortable and gradually suffocated. He opened his mouth and tried hard to smile. He seemed to hear the sound of waves. Whoosh, 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 his body seemed to be immersed in the sea, as if he was swimming at the bottom of the sea, leisurely and peaceful. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.